This is American justice. This is American democracy. And those of you who are familiar with it know that in America, democracy is hypocrisy. Now, if I'm wrong, put me in jail. But if you can't prove that a democracy is not hypocrisy, then don't put your hands on me. Democracy is hypocrisy. If democracy means freedom, why aren't our people free? If democracy means justice, why don't we have justice? If democracy means equality, why don't we have equality? Who are you? You don't know? Don't tell me Negro, that's nothing. What were you before the white man named you a Negro? And where were you? And what did you have? What was yours? What language did you speak then? What was your name? It couldn't have been Smith or Jones or Bunch or Powell. That wasn't your name. They don't have those kind of names where you and I came from. No, what was your name? And why don't you now know what your name was then? Where did it go? Where did you lose it? Who took it? And how did he take it? What tongue did you speak? How did the man take your tongue? Where is your history? How did the man wipe out your history? What did the man do to make you as dumb as you are right now? 20 million black people in this country have been like boys in the white man's house. He even calls us boys. Don't care how big you get, he calls you boy. You can be a professor. To him, you're just another boy. I heard him calling Ralph Bunch. Well, he's a good old boy. And if we can't do it, we should hush our mouth. If you can't do for yourself what the white man is doing for himself, don't say you're equal with the white man. If you can't set up a factory like he sets up a factory, don't talk that old equality talk.
Hello, my friends. Hello, my family. We are back. Are you guys excited? This should be fun. You guys know I love breaking the echo chamber in RBN whenever we get the opportunity to do so. Bounce ideas off of a lot of different people's head. If anyone who want to talk, right? So to get some people caught up to speed. I had a call in yesterday too after our show with Dane the other day. This topic of patriotic socialism and a few other small disagreements are things that people have been asking us to talk about for quite a long time. And then we had Danny that just so happened to be booked on Monday. And we're like, it'd be a good time to explore these ideas. And as soon as I knew we was going to talk about this topic, I was like, I guess I got to talk to Jackson too. I got to talk to Haas too. Because I never had any intention of this being a one-sided conversation. I'm a citizen journalist. I love talking to people with different perspectives. That's how I challenge myself. That's how we keep each other sharp. And we had Jackson Hinkle who joined us in the General Strike Summit. So it's been quite a while since we talked, Jackson. But thank you for joining us once again on RBN. Thank you, Jackson. Make sure you check your audio. We may have muted you. Maybe let's check that real quick. Oh, I got you.
There we go. You hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you. Welcome, Jackson.
Cool. Yeah, I'm happy to be here, and I'm glad that you do have this open dialogue, because most people just make videos smearing or criticizing or just simply putting up one side of a debate, even if it's not like bad faith, and then not bringing the other side on to discuss. So I think it's going to be good.
Yeah, I tried to set up like a barbershop style vibe to this show. And so, yeah, we do talk shit sometimes. We do. But whenever I talk shit, I always like, I'm down to talk to people. I'm never down to cancel anyone. I'm down to have a discussion. And if I hurt people's feelings, that's fine. People can come in with me with heat. I can handle it. I'm a grown man. It's all good. But we just always like to talk, and we like to have conversation. One of them is about socialism. And we had Danny on. And this has been something that I've just been on my channel vibing, talking about anti-imperialism, anti-capitalism, police violence, state violence. But then people always like, what are your opinion about patriotic socialism? Which shows that you obviously had a giant effect on discourse. Obviously, your channel is killing it, because people constantly ask me about this take, and I'm like, I believe what I believe. I don't see myself being patriotic to this country that have a long-term history of destroying, violating my community. And I understand, especially after reading history and seeing anti-colonial struggles, I see like people being patriotic in the DPRK, for example, people being patriotic in China. And that makes sense because they are victims of the imperial core, for example. So if you're fighting this giant empire, it makes sense for you guys to band together collectively to challenge this giant empire, right? So if you're China, if you're the DPRK, you fighting against the U.S. empire and NATO, I'm like, yeah, that makes sense. If you waving the flag there, our friend Josana, she was very patriotic about Brazil because she fighting an anti-colonial struggle against Bolsonaro and the capitalists and the police state struggles in Brazil. So I understand that, right? My personal perspective, as someone who don't even know my nation state because of what the Western Empire has done, I personally not patriotic. But I would love to hear your perspective because I'm not like you said. I don't even understand people who want to talk about something without hearing. At least we're a solid communicator coming straight from their voice. And I want to hear from you. Like, what does patriotic socialism means to you personally, Jackson? Because I'll allow you to define it because I don't want to put words in your mouth. What does that mean to you, Jackson?
Well, I think first off, I should point out, and pretty much everyone that's been a big proponent of, the struggle for socialism being patriotic has said, like, people like Haas, for example, and others have said that, if you're a black nationalist or if you're someone who's in favor of land back, then it's, I guess, reasonable to not be a patriot because, you don't necessarily support this, the nation state, the people here in the history, not you in particular, but people who are those things. But what I will say first and foremost is you bring up a good point and a point that should be noted about the imperial core. And Danny brought this up about being a patriotic socialist in the imperial core. I think it's worth noting that everywhere across the world, with the exception of in states like the US or these Western states, where you have like this Western leftist mindset when it comes to the predominant wave of socialism. Socialism is not some fringe idea, or it's not a part of a socialist movement that stands unto itself. It is part and parcel to socialism. And everyone from Lenin to Marx to Mao has been able to, and even Fidel Castro has been able to identify this and understand that this is the truth of socialism. In Russia, for example, Russia was a former imperial power. Of course, you have many strong patriotic socialists there. Cuba, Venezuela, Bolivia, Peru were all settler states. You have many patriotic socialists there. That's the norm there. The idea of patriotic socialism is not to say that we are going to erase or celebrate all of the historic ills of our country, which are true, or the historic ills of settler states like Cuba, Bolivia, Peru, Venezuela, or, former imperial states like Russia, for example. But to instead say that we are going to recognize the material national reality, the people, culture, borders, religions, all these sorts of things of our country, and embody that as we try to create and expose the divisions of the oligarchical elite and the people of this country in an effort to build a socialist future, one that is founded on the basis of American progressivism and American labor struggles, these sorts of things. So for the United, and we can get into the details about all these sorts of things, but in short, the most succinct way that I usually put it is, I feel like there's a lot of people who go through a phase of saying like, oh, I want to burn down the country. I want to tear it all down and build something new. Well, even if you support something like that, which, there's plenty of people who I'm sure do support something like that, you have to recognize that per the founding documents of our country, they said that, well, it's the duty of our government to uphold the basic rights that are guaranteed to us. And if they don't, then it's the duty of the people and the right of the people to either alter or abolish the government. And I think that's the most patriotic thing that you could do of all. That's why Mao, he said that, the people of Japan and the people of Germany during the Second World War should still be patriotic, because the wars that the Japanese aggressors and the wars that Hitler was waging were actually antithetical and hurt the working class struggles of the people of Japan and Germany and the people of the world. So I think that there's been a lot of, stones cast in my direction and a lot of misconceptions placed upon me and what I believe, when all I really believe is improving the country for average Americans and making this a better place to live.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I wanted to ask you, because I heard so many people describe it. Someone left the chat. It was like it sounds like National Socialism. I'm like, I wouldn't go that far. I once again, my point of view, I made clear many times. I'm not personally patriotic, but if you try to build a sense of community, and your version of patriotism is caring for each other, caring for your neighbors, that is what I advocate for. Now, personally, like promoting the U.S. flag, like that just personally made my stomach turn. And once again, I'm just speaking my personal experience. And I'm gonna just ask you this before we get into talking about socialism to workers. Do you think, and this is what turns out for a lot of people I see in my community that I think is rational, do you think you have to be patriotic to be socialist?
I think socialism is part and parcel to, or patriotism is part and parcel to socialism. I think it's just a part of it. It's not necessarily whether or not you have to be a patriot or not. Whether or not you want to wave the flag or you want to drape yourself in a flag is a whole nother question. But I mean, if you are a person who says that you recognize the history of our country and you are going to use that history and the historical contradictions between the ruling class and the people to make a better country. You critique the empire that is harming us and harming people all across the world. Those are all patriotic things, whether or not you call yourself a patriot or not. Whether or not you want to address yourself as that is one thing, but that's exactly what being. I mean, Nick, you and I have probably agreement on most issues, especially the really important ones when it comes to war, the surveillance state, when it comes to addressing the oligarchical elite, big tech, all these sorts of things. And maybe we don't call ourselves the same thing, but we strive for the same goals. So I think it's part and parcel to socialism. And I would have to say that again, Marxism and the, dialectical worldview of recognizing the material reality of the country teaches us that there is no other path forward.
That once again, I understand the concept, and when I talk to a lot of conservatives, once again, I live in Missouri. I talk to a lot of conservatives in my time, not only through my time selling cars, but when I was in South Carolina, canvassing for Bernie, talking to a lot of different people, and like even when I'm discussing socialism, working class issues with these people, I don't see myself having to use patriotism to trick them. I understand what you're trying to do, and I actually don't even criticize it, because sometimes I would like to mess with conservatives while I say, how can you say you're patriotic if you don't believe that people should have health care? Like, how can you call yourself patriotic if you can step over someone who's a homeless, who's need help? That doesn't make sense to me. But I want to ask you more, and we're going to shift gears here in terms of like, how do you discuss anti-establishment ideas to the workers? Because one of the reasons why people wanted us to have this discussion, because like you said, there are a lot of people who had these misconceptions about you. There are a lot of people who thought patriotic socialism is like, and I've seen people say, you seen it too, people like this is like this authoritarian fascist ideology. And I think one of the reasons why they think that, because they see they just so happen to see a lot of patriotic socialists. They tend to repeat more socially conservative ideas. I don't want to put words in your mouth. I think you consider yourself a socially conservative. Do you believe that advocating for social conservative rhetoric, do you think that's necessary? Do you think that advantageous in terms of winning working class people to our side? And if I mischaracterize your position, you can feel free to correct me on that. But go ahead, Jackson.
I think labeling something as socially conservative is subjective. So me calling myself a patriot, some might view as conservative. I don't. And I'll also say that I've as a Marxist, we draw our own line. So it's neither, we are Republican or conservative, or we are left or liberal or anything like that. Marxism is its own line that needs to be drawn, and historically Marxists have. As I talk about social issues, maybe some of them can be viewed as more conservative. Some of them are viewed as more progressive. But I think that when it comes to that sort of idea of socially conservative rhetoric, that's subjective. And I don't know.
One example, just to be specific, because I guess you're right. It is subjective when I have to say it like that, right? So, and you can, and this is a good time for you to set the record straight, because some people call you out for anti-trans rhetoric. Well, this is something they feel to be anti-trans rhetoric. Now, my position, and something that we've been pushed on RBN, is I think the culture war is a distraction. It's a distraction by the liberal class, by the establishment, to get workers to fight over issues that does not affect them. So there are a lot of people in our community, a lot of people I know, a lot of LGBTQ, radical people with a lot of revolutionary potential who are turned off. And this is like this divide on the left that's kind of happening for no reason. And I feel like that, like, and if you feel like me saying anti-trans rhetoric is probably mischaracterizing you, feel free to correct me on that too. But what will your response be to the people who say, I can't work with Jackson because some of his social conservative-ish positions, Jackson?
I'll answer that, and then I want to come back to the last point. But
yeah, go ahead.
No, I do not view myself as anti-trans. Not that it makes a difference as to whether someone's anti-trans or not, but many trans folk, LGBTQ folk in my community and in the communities that hover around me. But I do have one stance that some people might view as anti-trans that I think is just rational. I mean, I believe in the equality of all people. But when it comes to people under the age of 18 years old in the United States who are going through gender transitions or being put on hormone blockers, I think that's an issue. And if that in your eyes makes me anti-trans, then so be it. But in a country where in most cases you can't go to war, you can't buy a can of spray paint, in most cases you can't drive, you can't get a tattoo, you can't make non-life altering decisions such as these, that we're going to somehow sit back and think that it's okay to have a life altering decision such as, surgically removing genitalia or something of that effect, or going on hormone blockers. I think that's actually, a problem. And I think that's something worth discussing. And people can put forward their arguments. I've never really heard an argument that justifies the morality of doing something like that. I mean, and I know sometimes people claim I'm being hyperbolic, but I'm really not. Like Fox News even is running segments about 4-year-olds going through gender transitions. And I'm like, 4-year-olds can barely form a sentence. And you mean to tell me that like they're going to have the mental capacity to go through a full gender transition? So that's what I'll say about that. I don't think that makes me anti-trans. Before
you move to your next point, have you ever talked to like a trans activist or maybe someone who, because I know like science could be politicized. People like, I see people on the right boost some scientists agree with them, but there are a lot of people in the scientific community that will say, "Oh, there's nothing wrong with kids transitioning." Like, have you ever heard their perspective? Had one of them on, had a comment? Because I can't really. Because once again, I focus on state violence, guys, and the class war. It's not something I'll specialize in. So the only thing I would say on something like this, like this is an issue I see a lot of trans people are passionate about. Like, have you had like an expert on that explain why they're doing this? And do you see any argument that they put out? Do you want to sponsor that, Jackson? Sorry to interrupt you. You can finish the rest of your point.
I don't focus on this on my channel. I've never had anyone reach out to me to come on my channel to discuss this. I've had many people engage in Twitter arguments with me about this, but usually it resorts down to calling me a transphobe for the views that I just espoused. I would be fine talking to someone about this. I really don't understand how at a time when we have all of those things that I just listed as being illegal to do under the age of 18, that you could have transitioning your
I'll
gender.
be interested in seeing that debate. Once again, I'm not as well read on like the science that they use to justify it, and I know, and once again, just in my community, I know people who passionately defend it. So I can't really have that debate with you. I would love to see it. And this is going to the issue regarding talking to socialism to workers, expanding our movement, right? So go ahead, Jackson.
Yeah, I want to finish on the point that I made earlier, because you were talking about whether it's necessary to be socially conservative in your rhetoric, and bringing up the trans part as a side piece, an example to that. Like I just said, I don't make trans commentary as the pinnacle, nor as even a mainstay of my commentary. I would say probably less than, I don't know if I've ever actually I don't think I've ever made a video about trans issues or anything like that. I really don't. Maybe occasionally I'll talk about it. I probably tweet about it more than I talk about it on my show, but So I don't think that's a great example, considering I very rarely talk about that. But what I will say is that, again, if you view me calling myself a patriotic socialist as being socially conservative, I don't think that's opportunistic, because this is another thing I've seen thrown around, is that, like, oh, the whole patriotic socialism thing is just opportunism, and it's an effort to try and win people over. And I think that is true. It does do that. There's no doubt about that. I mean, you can't ignore the history of the people in this country and isolate yourself from that, because that's what leftists have done since the 1960s. And that's why the left is such a pathetic joke, and has been since the 1960s, because leftists have tried to alienate themselves. Leftists specifically, who consider themselves Marxists, have tried to alienate themselves from the historical reality of the country and elevate themselves above the working people of this country, the 80 to 90% of the people of this country who really do the grunt work that has built this country. So I don't think it's opportunistic at all. I don't think it's being done under the veil of like trying to win people over, though I think it does do that. And one last point I'll make here is, even Marx points this out. Marx said, inform the struggle of the proletariat with bourgeoisie is at first a national struggle. It is altogether self-evident that the working class must organize itself at home as a class, and that its own country is the immediate arena of its struggle. And that can, maybe later on, we can talk about internationalism as it relates to patriotism, because that kind of flows into that.
Yeah, well said. And I want to bring this up because it also kind of relates to this conversation, because we had a call-in discussion that was based on the same idea. And I don't mind, once again, me personally, I don't care if you call yourself a patriotic socialist. And I actually use the strategy of using people's patriotism against them. It's like, hey, if you claim to be a patriot, why you don't support people in healthcare, for example, right? But I found, like, just through using class rhetoric, just appealing to people's material interests, like explaining how the ruling class, Wall Street, is robbing people through big pharma, and how we should save money with healthcare. I generally don't find using like anti-woke in any sort of what I view to be a culture war. And there's a lot of people who claim you do that, and who you claim you always attack wokeism as ideology, where I always view it as something that came from our community, like something that came from the Black community. So now the overall discussion is about how you discuss socialism to the workers, right? Now, if you can win some people over with discussing anti-wokeism, that's fine. But there are a lot of people who will draw a hard line in the sand, and they've turned off. Whether you agree with that or not, whether you think that's fair, whether you think that's not fair, if I could win people over without provoking culture war issues that may turn people off from a movement, shouldn't it be smarter for us to avoid that and trying to get people to stop focusing on that in general? Do you have a final response to that before I move on to the next part, Jackson?
Yeah, I think that's a good point to bring up as well, because my primary commentary on woke culture has always been the idea, and this is actually something that I agreed with Ben Norton on previously. It's always been the idea that the weaponization of wokeism and of woke culture is being used to serve the greater tool, the highest stage of capitalism, imperialism. A brief example of that is, for example, a recent bill that the entire squad, the Justice Democrats, voted for, and was actually championed by progressives in the House Democratic Caucus. And that was a bill that basically said, look, if countries X, Y, and Z of the world do not agree to the cultural norms of the West, if they don't agree to LGBTQ norms, then we are going to place sanctions upon your country and starve your people and prevent industrialization of your nation. So that's an example of the weaponization of wokeism to target adversarial states to bring about the demise of their population. Now, this has always been a primary concern of mine, and something that I talk about quite a bit, because that's just one example. There's many examples of this. The problem that I've now witnessed, and what has caused me to be so much more outspoken about these woke issues, is that my discussion of that, the weaponization of woke culture, has turned people to try and cancel me. In the case of Ben Norton, again, I don't want to talk about him too much because he's not here to defend himself, but it is true, and there's nothing that he can say about the fact that for many months leading up to me finally responding to him, he was going out on podcast after podcast and calling myself a fascist and calling me a proto-fascist because of the fact that I do not personally adhere to these woke values, and I don't think that the weaponization of them either is all that good of a thing. I don't really talk about my lack of adherence or my lack of belief in the woke values. Again, what I primarily discuss is the weaponization of the woke values. So
that's fair, I think that's the right thing to do. But go ahead, finish your thought, Jackson.
And yeah, I'll finish it off by saying I think it's fine to disagree with me on that, and I'm very happy to work with people who don't consider themselves patriots. That's what Gerald Horn, I think his name was, he said that on Brianna Joy Gray show. He said, I'm happy to work with patriots, though I don't consider myself a patriot. Well, I'm happy to work with non-patriots, even though I consider myself a patriot. In the same vein, I'm happy to work with people who support woke issues if we can find common ground on other issues, So I don't think it's in the interest of anyone to cancel someone or call someone a fascist, especially when you're implying that fascists should be killed like Ben Norton does. I don't think that's in the interest of anyone.
Yeah, and your explanation of neoliberal woke culture is spot on but this is and we need to make sure we educate that they hijack from us. Like the woke has been a term used in the Black community, anti-colonial struggles, to mean awakened, being aware of your surroundings, being wise. And the establishment want nothing more for us to have anti-intellectualism to dumb down our movement. Fred Hampton said we need to be smart. We need education. If we don't have education, we end up with Negro imperialists. And I'm not saying you do this, Jackson, because I'm trying not to straw man, but you see people like Ron DeSantis. You see a lot of right-wing people, like social media people and people with podcasts. They just use woke as like bad thing. Like Ron DeSantis, like, we're here to fight the woke mob in school. And I feel like our job as people trying to create an anti-imperialist movement is to educate people that they are they are manipulating the term. They are taking advantage of the fact that there are people who mean well, and they're trying to turn that against imperialism instead of justifying the right-wing use of the term. And I think that was some people will criticize. But I'll pass it to you before I move on to the next point, because if you think that's a mischaracterization, you can correct that. But go ahead, Jackson.
No, I understand what you're saying, and I think there's actually a new vein of this sort of weaponization where we're seeing now like a weaponization, because woke has kind of become the establishment right now, right? You have like Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi.
Yeah, it drives me crazy, man. It drives me crazy, but go ahead.
Yes, so I think there's a new vein of it where you see the weaponization of anti-woke culture, right? Because so many Americans are anti-quote-unquote woke, and you see people like DeSantis who come out of like all of the pro-war hawkish think tanks that embody all of the pro-Israel Zionist ideas that one could ever muster, coming out of places like the Hudson Institute. And you see him weaponizing this popular sentiment of anti-woke issues to try and subvert people's attention and bring it over to, his side of the aisle for a imperialist worldview is what it's going to be probably. I mean, he's probably going to run for president. He's going to probably run on these anti-woke issues. He's probably not going to talk a lot about his foreign policy. I've asked Christine Pushaw, who's his spokesperson, about this, and they don't address it. They won't talk about this. He's just a governor. Well, yeah, but he's a governor who's probably going to run for president. So you should probably start talking about this stuff. She herself is a massive Zionist. So I don't trust these people who weaponize it in either way. And again, that's why I kind of just pointed out the absurdity of both of those things. Now I have my own personal views, agree with them, disagree with them, whatever, but that's not what I talk about primarily on my channel.
Yeah, that's good then. That's good, because that's what we advocate for, right? So I want to move on to the next part, because it's the same in the same vein of the culture war. Because when we did our stream last night, I wasn't talking to you in general, but I see this a lot where people it seems like they push anti-woke rhetoric to appease right-wingers and to lure them in. And it's like they're trying to trick them. Like, hey, I agree with you on trans issues. Once again, not saying issue, but I agree with you on trans issues. I agree with you on anti-gay issues to rope you in, right? And I criticize that because I think that's intellectually lazy. I think we should be trying to pull people away from that and explain that the ruling class use these culture war issues to distract us. And one person I see in particular, I think is guilty of this, is Andrew Tate. And I'm gonna say straight up right now, I don't know a ton about this guy because once again, I don't pay attention to a lot of this. I'm just bringing up a criticism I heard. I heard that this guy is very culture warring, to say the least, and he's very rich. He's very divisive, and the reason why I don't know a ton about the guy is because I tend to avoid getting in the muck in those divisive issues, just because I think there's so many things that we should be focusing on right now. So there are people that think that says, and once again, I'm literally just saying the broad what I see in what the normies say. You can feel free to correct it if I'm wrong. And the reason why I'm using normies is because I don't know the guy, but they said he's misogynist. He had all these problematic views. So what would you say to people who will criticize you for even spending any time promoting someone like Andrew Tate? Go ahead, Jackson.
Well, everything that I've said about Andrew Tate on my YouTube channel has been primarily about the issue of censorship. I have even gone so far as to say that I think personally Andrew Tate embodies a degenerate lifestyle, a non-traditional lifestyle. I think he's hypocritical. I've also briefly said that I agree with a lot of the things he says, not everything he says. But if you look at any of the videos, and I've only done like 3 videos about him, maybe 4, everything I say about him is, look, this guy is the most Google search man on the internet. A lot of people don't know that. And it's mostly Gen Z that's Google searching him. He's more searched on Google than Trump, than Biden, than the Pope, than whoever. The fact that Silicon Valley decided to take him off of the internet, off of YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, his Gmail, everything, right? The fact that they decided to remove him from the internet when he's the most famous man on the internet under the guise of he's a misogynist, I think is ludicrous, because I don't think it was about him being a misogynist. If it was about him being a misogynist, then they should also get rid of Bill Clinton, because he flew on the Lolita Express 26 times and he was seen allegedly on Epstein's Island with 2 underage girls. So I don't think it's about him being a misogynist, though you can think that about him if you'd like. I think it's about the fact that he oftentimes talked about the Great Reset. He oftentimes talked about the Ukraine war. He's a big fan of Putin, and he's exposed the Ukraine war lunacy in great detail, actually. And he also has exposed the lunacy of the dystopian COVIDian nightmare and that agenda. So I think it's more about that. He's an independent man on the internet, whatever. But you're not going to find long, drawn-out segments where I'm going through all of the cultural aspects of him discussing women or business life or self-improvement, and me giving commentary on that.
Against the censorship, it seems like, because especially since after what YouTube did to you and they took your PayPal away, I can understand being against the censorship. Some people will say there's a certain line that must be drawn in terms of harassment, and this is something that I grapple with all the time, because I don't believe that these social media companies should be colluding with the government to censor people, especially when they allow psychopaths like John Bolton. John Bolton can have a Twitter account after what he did. And I don't like that double standard. I feel like that double standard will always be used against us. But when you see like Live with TikTok, and I use that as an example only because I don't know Andrew Tate that much. I really wish I did. I just heard a lot of people was upset at you at that. That's why I just want to get your personal response. I want to hear from you. But like when I see Live with TikTok, massive platform, they lead to people being harassed, docked, violently attacked, or events ruined. I grapple with that because, like, all right, now that's a giant organization that punching down on people they disagree with, and I'm like, I don't want to see people censored, but that's a very gray line when you attacking people using your social media. And once again, I don't know if this is something that Andrew Tate could be accused of. I know there's some people that do, that say his messaging leads to people being hurt. So I agree with you on terms of censorship, especially when it comes to people speaking anti-establishment views. I just want to add that part to the discussion. I'll pass it to you so you can respond, and I'll move on to the next point.
I think that I mean, I don't know. You could say that anything leads to hurting people, right? You could say that anything leads to hurting people in real life, or harassment or whatever. I think what we need to do is just be very, very rudiment in calling for the extension of free speech rights to the internet, no more, no less. That means that, if someone decided to commit a horrific act of violence, of course that's condemnable and we should not support that. But that doesn't mean that we sew their mouths shut and they can never, ever have free speech again. That doesn't mean they can't go speak at a city council meeting after they're released from prison. That doesn't mean that they, can't do these sorts of things. They can't go out on the news and talk about their issues. So I think that these are the Silicon Valley big tech. They're trying to silence people under the guise of protecting the masses from harassment or whatever. Some cases, not even under the guise of that. Sometimes under the guise of quote unquote misinformation, like they've done to me and probably you guys and so many others. But I think that we just need to extend free speech rights to the internet. Just because someone's a misogynist doesn't mean that they lose their freedom.
We need to nationalize it, and that's why I always hesitate, because we need to nationalize it, because I don't trust the oligarchs to make these decisions, especially if you're going to ban someone who may be deplorable, but you're going to have warmonger, war criminals, CNN, MSNBC liars that have a platform on there, and that's to the concept that I explained before. The reason why people distrust the decision made by the government and oligarchs, because the oligarchs are more powerful than the government. We feel like big tech has infiltrated the government, and the government infiltrated big tech, which is fascism. So there is this mistrust. So even though even people are like, oh, we want to protect people, it's hard to trust that when they are just banning people for speaking the truth on war, for example, right? So I want to talk about another thing I brought up on our last episode when we talk about how to bring people to our side, and I want to talk about the use of the term globalism. And just like our previous discussion, I would like you to define it, because I'm legitimately curious. I want to drag the Overton window to the left. Any opportunity that I get, I noticed, and I would love to get your thought on this. I noticed that a lot of right wingers, they use the term globalist because they want to avoid calling out the real problem, the big, it's just capitalism. Like what people try and describe as a new problem is something that I've seen happen to our people, like the transatlantic. What's globalism other than this transatlantic slave trade? And when you look at the deals that the capitalists been making internationally for decades and decades and decades, I feel like we should explain to people that this is just what capitalism do. Globalism is kind of like a dog whistle that right wingers use because they're afraid of calling out capitalism. Let me ask, how do you define globalism? Why do you think it's important to use? And what did I get wrong or what did I get right on that?
Yeah, I don't really know exactly what was said during the live stream. I just watched bits and pieces of it with Danny, but there were some people insinuating that globalism is parallel to being anti-Semitic or something like that, which I'm not.
I heard that, but I wasn't. People said, I heard some people say that. Maybe because maybe some fringe right wingers maybe use code, but I didn't.
Isn't it interesting that people always forget that Palestinians are actually Semites too? Like, people forget these things. But what I think about globalism is I think we've actually gone a step further now than just capitalism. And you hear people like Yanis Varoufakis bring this up. I think Vijay Prashad has brought this up. Many leftists agree with this, that we've gone beyond capitalism even. Globalism embodies the one world sentiment of, and it actually kind of relates back to this whole patriotic socialism debate. It refers to the idea of like one world centralization of all energy markets, of all national boundaries, erasing national boundaries, erasing peoples, erasing histories, and kind of bringing it all under one Western cohesion. And that's what the West is trying to do. That's what the EU is. That's what NATO is. That's what the World Economic Forum and Davos is. It is kind of a catch-all word for, all of these sorts of things, whatever you want to call it. There's different aspects of it. Can you say that capitalism is embodied within it? Yes, I think so. But when you talk about these sorts of issues, it's not just capitalism. It's not just centered to capitalism, because there's many other aspects of it. For example, you see the intrusion of this like biomedical security state that is manifested as a result of COVID and monkeypox, and who knows what's going to come next. I mean, I'm sure you could say that is part and parcel to capitalism, but it's also something beyond that. You look at this massive push for a green energy shift at a time when it's just not feasible in the European Union. And that's bringing about the demise of a capitalistic industry, private industry, in the EU of oil, natural gas, liquefied natural gas, coal, nuclear, all these sorts of things. And it's going to cause the complete collapse of the EU to bring about a great reset and establish a new branch of totalitarian control in the masses governing by debt. These things go actually a step above capitalism. So I would 100% push back against anyone who says that it is anti-Semitic. Like Danny is a very silly man. He says that saying soy is racist and saying that globalism is anti-Semitic. It's a bunch of bullshit. And also, I will say that, yeah, capitalism is part and parcel to globalism, but globalism is all encompassing, and it actually encompasses more than just capitalism.
I'm sure there are some right wingers that probably use that in an anti-Semitic way. It's a shame. It's a shame that that Zionists kind of ruined that, right? Because so whenever I see people say just throw anti-Semitism out, I always give a pause because they ruined it. They ruined the term. So I'm sure that there are some people out there that use that term in an anti-Semitic way. I don't think you're using it that way, and I think it'd be silly for anyone who just say anyone who uses the term as being anti-Semitic. I think there's people who definitely are. The issue I have with the term, I think it's very vague, and this is a very small, very small critique, because I think we need to be very specific in our language and what we use, because when you use globalism, that means different things to different people. That's why right wingers use it, because they're like, we're gonna fight the globalists, even though they're an imperialist. They could be imperialists, they can be capitalists, but they go on Fox News like, we got to fight the globalists, because some people that means shutting down the border. Some people mean, that means we got to be isolationists. Some people mean that means fighting anti-imperialism. And the first thought that some people have when they hear the term globalism, they think, so we should just close borders, be isolationists. And my personal position in terms of fighting imperialism, I think we need an international leftist movement. I think we need to lock arms with our Eastern European brothers and sisters that find NATO. I think we need to lock arms with our global South brothers and sisters who find the CIA and Western imperialism there. So it kind of give off the impression that you don't want that. Do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I don't think it's vague at all. I think that using terms and, a specific term that you could use that rises above capitalism, for example, is techno-feudalism. Now, that's a phrase that is embodied within globalism, and I think is representative of the term globalism. I think that's fair. And it is different than just capitalism. And again, you hear any of these people, any of these leftist intellectuals discuss techno-feudalism, it is encompassing all of the issues that we refer to as globalism. But the average American, the average person, is not going to be able to understand nor resonate with the term techno-feudalism. If you say that we need to fight against techno-feudalism, that in all honesty is more vague and ambiguous to most people in the country than, say, fighting against globalism. Globalism is a far more culturally relevant term than saying techno-feudalism. So I think if you want to have high-level conversations that are going to be out of touch for the masses of the country, then sure, refer to it in the very, very, very specific, out of touch phrases and terms that you want to refer to it in, but it's not going to resonate with anyone. And on my program, I try to resonate with as many people as possible and expose what's really going on with the globalists. And I think I do a good job of that. And I think if I were to discuss everything from the perspective and from the point of view as a Harvard level professor or a new school of economics level professor, it would turn a lot of people off and probably come off as more arrogant than I am. So I don't like.
I warn a lot of people because I like theory. I like nerding out with theories with friends. But I warn people to, like, don't go out to ordinary working class people think you can quote Mao, and when they feel like you're quoting scripture. You have to be relatable. And I feel like some people, especially when they use terms like globalism, things that very off-putting to a lot of anti-colonial movements and people I know, like when they hear woke ideology, it seems like that's anti-woke ideology. It seems like that's a shortcut to get a lot of these people on our side. And in my experience, I don't talk to workers like they're dumb. I just say, hey, Joe Biden is spending $870 billion on the military. Yeah, that's something that we need. We need to end the wars. We need healthcare, and just literally just simple kitchen table issues will be enough to connect with people. And I think that's kind of what you advocate too. So the challenge.
I don't think that's out of touch to say that.
Yeah. And so, I think I pretty much covered that. I think the main challenge with a lot of people, who take issue with that, they just see right wingers using that in different ways, and we want to communicate against that. But I think once again, if you do that, that's great.
I know many left wingers who use the phrase globalism and globalists, and I think it's completely fine to use, as long as you're not, of course, using it in the way to refer to some sort of anti-Semitic sentiment. But again, I also encourage anyone who refuses to try and connect with the American public and just engage in ultra high level specific language that no one can really resonate with, do it by all means, and try to start a newspaper or start an outlet or start a Twitter feed or something using that language specifically and solely, and see how it goes. I don't think it's going to go well, but prove me wrong. And I don't know. I don't think that really works.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you build a platform. I build my platform by trying to make sure I'm educating people and pushing back against a lot of people I feel pushing the culture war. But obviously you're doing a good job at that. We have super chats that I want to get to as well, because I want to keep you on here for an hour. So I think maybe take about 15 minutes to get to the super chat. I do want to ask you one question, because I'm interested in the patriotic socialist position on reparations. I talked to Caleb Maupin about it. We had a great conversation about it. Where do you stand on that issue of reparations, Jackson?
Well, I think that reparations are eventually going to be needed for not just people of our country, but I mean, I think reparations are going to be needed for people of every country that we have soiled the land of, we've robbed, we've taken the raw mineral resources from, we've killed and slaughtered the people of, so on and so forth. I think that I don't have the answer to what that's going to look like. And I think that should be a conversation with the people who've been affected to make that decision. But as a patriot, and I'd be curious to hear Maupin's opinions on this, but as a patriot and as someone who considers themselves a patriot within, a broader struggle of internationalism against this ruling global elite, I think that has to look like a multipolar world and win-win cooperation amongst the people of the world. That's what true internationalism is, and that's how we're going to be able to rebuild the wrongs that have been done throughout so many generations and centuries. But if you're asking me, like, do I have a specific set dollar amount or a specific idea or a specific industrialization project? No.
Yeah. Actually, that's something that a lot of people struggle with. A lot of people research. If you look at people who support reparations, their numbers, you get different numbers in general. And I would argue that being patriotic is supporting this healing process. Not only a debt owed, because the labor value of generations of Black people have been stolen, and they are continuing to be stolen by the state by civil asset forfeiture, redlining. Now you got a lot of I was literally a victim of insurance rate fraud, where my car insurance rates were higher. I had higher interest. I said insurance. Interest rates. I was a victim of higher interest rate. My first car loan was a higher interest rate, and that cost me at least $1,000, and probably more. And these are like financial crimes. A lot of them that Joe Biden support. A lot of liberals are hypocrites because Joe Biden supported the bankruptcy bill. So a lot of people think it's just slavery, but it's a debt that's owed to us. And not only that, the weight of the crime, the same way they pay reparations for people who were victim of Japanese internment camp. I think patriots should advocate for that debt to be paid and for this healing process to start. That's why there's always this anxiety, this racial anxiety. And a lot of experts, they think that racial anxiety is because that debt hasn't been paid and not even an apology is offered. So we don't have to stay on the topic too long, but do you have anything you want to add to that, Jackson?
I guess I do have a quote here that I think kind of relates to this. I think it was Lenin. He said that, yes, Lenin said, and it does relate to this. He said, "We love our language and our country, and we're doing our very utmost to raise her toiling masses to the level of democratic and socialist consciousness. We're full of a sense of national pride, and for that very reason, we particularly hate our slavish past and our slavish present, where they self-landed proprietors aided by capitalists are loading us into a war." So I think that should be said, that patriots and patriotic socialists don't, again, erase or ignore the history and the slavish past and the slavish present that still exists today and will exist in the future. And you actually have to recognize that, combat that, and work to repair that. So I don't disagree with you.
Yeah, I think we got to everything, and I was trying to lead with a lot of things that people wanted us to address that they knew we disagreed on. And I know a lot of people expected a lot of fights, but I like the anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist point of view. Like you said at the beginning of the debate, we agree on most things. I was trying to go over a lot of things that a lot of people think we disagree with, and I'll let people who watch the show address that as well. Now, I want to talk about, before we get into super chats, because I don't want to keep you too long. I know you have another show.
I have plenty of time. So
okay, cool. I want to ask you about something that we definitely don't disagree about. I want to handle all the disagreements first, but I definitely want to ask you about Ukraine, because we got this issue right first. A lot of people that we had on show, the Gray Zone, we got the issue right first. Your channel exploded ever since the Ukraine coverage, because you've been exposing the narrative, and you pay for it as well. And this, especially ever since I saw your PayPal get taken down, I've seen a lot of people being censored online. I'm like, fuck, when are they gonna come for me? So
they haven't yet.
So I'm gonna ask you this question: why do you think the establishment, very vague, I would love you to, why do you think the establishment is so scared of people just speaking the truth on Ukraine? What do they have to hide? Go ahead, Jackson.
I think it's, they've come after a lot of people, not just me. And I'm surprised. I'm sure they'll come after you. But I think what they have to hide is that this is the first time ever in which we've seen the multipolar world in action. You know, you have Russia acting as a balanced and even more powerful buffer to NATO and to the West, not just in the bout of military superiority in Ukraine, but also in the battle of economic attrition that's been waged against Russia. And they've been quite successful. And I think that worries the West, not just in terms of how this is going to end in Kiev. I don't think they really care about that. I think what they care about is what this means for the future of energy markets, what this means for the future of control of global dollar hegemony, and whether or not there will be a substantive replacement within BRICS. I think that they care about, trade. Obviously, China and Russia are expanding greatly, and the United States is losing out on our trade partners. And I think that probably the most preeminent concern amongst these sorts of figures in the European Union or in Wall Street in London is the idea that many of them share, not all of them, but many of them share. And it's a Malthusian ideology that the world has a certain sort of carrying capacity of 1 billion people. And if we go above that, then we're not going to have the ability to carry life for future generations. And China and Russia pose an alternative to that through their pro-growth, pro-industrialization, pro-population expansion worldviews. And for that reason, this worries the West a lot. So I think all of those things combined are why this is so much different than, say, any sort of political commentary on like Iraq or Afghanistan or Syria or Venezuela, because this is the first time that they have a very serious threat.
And I asked a few people this question just because I'm curious. I go back and forth. Was they really this stupid in thinking that the Russian sanctions were going to win them this economic war? Or was it a global controlled demolition? I heard Jimmy say that. I go back to, like, there's some people, you heard like Lindsey Graham say this in 2012, where he was like mocking the size of Russian economy. He was like, oh, Russia got an economy the size of Spain. So there's some people I think really do believe they could have won the economic war, but I also go the other way. Well, I'm like, actually, they probably do just want a global demolition, because you see all these worker class movements rising up. And I think they just want to remind people who's boss. They want to put people back in their place, put people back in the struggle. If a lot of people die, they wouldn't mind that. Depopulation would be great for the global agenda. Which do you think it is? I'm just curious. Like, do you think it was a controlled demolition, or do you think some of them really was dumb enough to think they can win this economic war?
I think those are both valid points. I think that definitely there's no doubt that many in Wall Street and many in London underestimated the capacity of the Russian economy, as especially we're about to go through a commodities boom. You know, they're a commodities producer, we're not. And I think they underestimated them. You hear people like Graham or like DeSantis who've called Russia a glorified gas station, which is just insane. But I think that also there is a genuine aspect of this. And I wouldn't say that like all of the sanctions embody this, because I do think that they expected Russia to fare just as poorly as every other nation that we have ever sanctioned into oblivion. But I do think that there's an aspect of this which is probably led by, you know, the more non-Euro West to try and bring about the collapse of Europe. And I do think that this is being under the guise of trying to bring the EU completely under the reins of London and Wall Street again. And I think it's also being done with the explicit intent, as you put it, to try and usher in this great reset, you know, rob the masses of their wealth, leave them not only with nothing, but in serious debt. That's what we're going to see after this winter. They're expecting like over half of the UK is going to be in very serious debt. So I think that's part of it. I think it's both.
Do you see, because I want to ask you about the European energy crisis while I have you here. It's crazy. They wanted to sacrifice everything to uphold their hegemony. In order to uphold full spectrum dominance, they're willing to tank their entire working class and hope they take it. And I think it can go either way, whether they take it or whether they revolt, because a lot of people are very passive. Look, you just talk about the UK, and there's a giant energy crisis that is going to happen there. And this is the messaging that is coming from the UK ruling class. Boris Johnson blames Putin for worsening cost of living. And when this heat crisis comes, they're going to say, well, the Russian government, they want us to buckle. He likes it. This is another one. This is what Caitlin Johnson said. The U.S. has, out of purely egotistic reasons, dragged Europe and especially Germany into a trap that will lead to its economic and social destruction. And it's actually very evil what they have done, because the stocks of weapon defense manufacturers have gone up. Ukraine politicians have voted for a 70% pay raise. A lot of them are getting random mansions in the Netherlands, for example. So we are seeing this heist of the global working class that is happening by the imperialists on a massive scale. So what are your thoughts on the European crisis, and how do you think this is going to end? Because this is, like, I've been warning, like, I've been telling people that don't follow the news. I'm like, guys, this shit about to get crazy in Europe if you guys not paying attention. So what's your prediction, and what are your thoughts on that?
It's going to be a crisis the likes of which we've never seen before. In all of recorded history, there's never been an instance in which a country or a set of states have sanctioned themselves into economic ruin. And that's exactly what we're seeing now. And it's kind of poetic, actually. But I think that this is an example that we can actually point to of the failures of globalism, right? The failures of the European Union. You now have all of these member states of the EU that are fighting back, workers primarily, actually fighting back against those EU elites that are telling them that they have to suffer 15%, 8% energy reduction in their countries for the next, 4 or 5 months, maybe for the foreseeable future. This isn't just going to be limited to this winter. It's going to be multiple winters that they have these sorts of crises. And the workers of these countries are fighting back, and they're saying, actually, this doesn't make sense for our country. It doesn't make sense that I'm going to have to shut my small businesses' doors, or I'm going to lose my job as a result of Germany's inability to open up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, or drop the sanctions, or, diversify their energy sources. So, this is, workers who have a structural critique of the globalist elite that are forcing this upon them, fighting back. And I think it is going to be the demise of the EU. You're already seeing countries like Poland, for example, come out, and Poland's no fan of Russia. They're probably one of the most Russophobic countries right now in the world. They're coming out and saying that they don't want to work with the EU or with the euro anymore. They want to have their own national currency. So I think this is the demise of the EU, and I think it's going to be absolutely catastrophic.
That's why I think they're trying to go out in a bang. They see what's going on. So they're like, we might take the whole world down with us. I don't know if you saw this. I got to read more into this. This is a story I was going to read into a little bit more, but this goes into the long-standing new strategy of escalating against China. And this is just another strategy to distract the global working class from them being robbed. Look at the evil China. Look at Putin, the evil Putin. And now they're trying to escalate war with China with Taiwan. We saw that with Nancy Pelosi's visit. And now you see with this story here. This was tweeted by antiwar.com. Biden to ask Congress to approve $1.1 billion arms sale for Taiwan. The planned sale comes amid soaring tensions sparked by Nancy Pelosi's visit to Taiwan. So I want to ask you this, Jackson. I don't know if you read this particular story, but that seems pretty goddamn crazy and blatantly escalatory. So what is your take on the United States blatant push to provoke war with China? What do you think that's about?
I think that, again, it's the same thing as Russia. It comes down to a pro-growth versus anti-growth worldview. China poses probably the strongest case for a pro-growth worldview. In the past 40 years, they've lifted 840 million people out of poverty. That's thanks to the strategic, brilliant planning as a result of the Communist Party of China and Xi Jinping's leadership, in large part, but not in whole, and lifting people out of poverty, specifically in regions like Tibet, in Xinjiang, and other rural regions of China. They've been able to guarantee free housing, free clothing, free water, clean drinking water, by the way, free food, free education to their people. And this is something that, despite all of the glory that you hear about it in the United States and in the West, we can't come close to anything of the sort. We can't even get free healthcare for our people in the United States. So I think that this is what it comes down to. China poses a unique threat to the United States because their population is 3 to 4 times the size of ours. So obviously they're going to be a much stronger economic powerhouse than we are going to be ever in due time. And the West is very worried about this because China is replacing us and filling all the vacancies of former U.S., trade relations, because our trade has always been unfair. It has always prioritized, essentially raping and pillaging other nations and their peoples, and dictating to them what they can and can't do in their governments. Whereas China focuses on, like we said earlier, what should be the tenets of good internationalism, win-win cooperation from an internationalist mindset that creates the industrialization of all nations.
Well said. Last question, which kind of related because the state of the left is very related to Ukraine because they all NATO puppets now. We call them the NATO squad. They all voted to expand NATO. I want to ask you, because we're going to have an activist summit in October. We are pushing mutual aid. I have a mutual aid organization I'm starting in Kansas City. We're giving people diapers, doing free school supplies, giveaways. CJ starting a chapter in LA. And the reason why we're doing this, we're not doing it because we think this is the automatic solution to all the problems we face right now. We're not saying that RBN, mutual aid, and activism alone is going to solve all the problems, but we might as well do fucking something. And we got with the amount of corrupt, evil psychopaths that we are facing, I feel like we need to do something. So based on, I want to ask you about your state, the state of the left. Like, you can talk about in terms of electoral politics, like whether people should vote for Democrats or anything. Like, what do you see as the step forward to challenge imperialism, challenge these people who giving billions of dollars to Ukraine, the people who are funding the cops more, the people who are stealing and busting homeless encampments. So the last question I want to really ask you before we move on to super chats is, what do you see the direction of the left? What do you think the direction of the left should be? And when I say left, I saw someone say what left. Let me just define it this way. just so we can avoid label. If you want to end the military-industrial complex in the capitalist world that we have right now, what do you think is the best strategy, and what do you think of the state of the anti-imperialist movement right now?
I think, speaking broadly, because there's so many different outlets in which you can work to achieve this, it is what I strive to do on my channel in terms of, media communication to different people. It's the effort of trying to expose the contradictions of the oligarchy and of the people, connect and represent and understand and identify the structure, superstructure, and infrastructure of America as a country and its history, and fight to create a country that is better for all people. As for it's very vague, but as for the left, I mean, I think my advice for the left today is that the left has, again, isolated themselves from the masses, and there is no connection amongst the left and the average American person. The left is more concerned with casting away any single person that doesn't agree with them on every single issue than they are than they are concerned with actually building any sort of, viable future for the people of this country. To bring up an example, I do not think that it is rational nor strategically viable to call someone like myself a fascist just because I identify as a patriot who's probably one of the most outspoken in the world against what the U.S. empire does. I think that this is very self-isolating, and I think it's actually dangerous to people that are being called fascists because if you say that fascists should be killed and then you're calling someone a fascist, I think we all know what that means. There's no reason to beat around the bush. But yeah, I think that the fake left has tried to elevate themselves above the national reality, above the people of this country. And I don't think that you're guilty of that. And I don't think that, many who reside in the sphere of our politics, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, I know exactly what issue you're talking about because we call it out all the time. The issue of the fake left, the people who are trying to divide. And we have to be very careful of who we are talking about. And there are the people who are purposely, and we all know who they are. They are Democratic operatives. These people who do not operate in good faith. These are the fake left that they do everything they can to get people to support the Democratic Party position. Now there's real activists on the left that has been crushed by the inside, by the outside, and we have taken L's. A lot of them have been taking L's because they've been ignored. And I think a lot of the people that are really in the struggle, they're not doing a lot of this childish nonsense that hurt in the left. The people that do a lot of that childish nonsense that really make the left get bad, they are pushed out for a reason, right? But go ahead, I want you to finish your thought because we do agree that there's a big problem with a lot of people who, because Bernie is guilty of this. Like, this is Bernie's fault because Bernie convinced a lot of people that they're socialists when they're not. Bernie and a lot of people thought that this movement was larger than it actually was. And then now after the movement ended, now we got siphon through who's really anti-establishment and who's really anti-capitalist. And I noticed the people who are to the right of other people like me or you, they will just assault. They will assault and they will attack anyone who challenges them left. But I want you to finish your thought, Jackson. We go to super chats. And
I agree with you. I think that, and you say, Democratic operatives, I think it's the same. I think it's people who prioritize partisanship over national critique. I think that national criticism is the pathway towards deepening of our national reality. And I think that's the only path forward for us in this world to try and uphold a multipolar world and build that and combat the globalists. So I think that this is exactly what we need to do. And again, we might all agree on the critiques of our nation, of the state, of the MIC, and of the intelligence community. But if you are a partisan, then you are going to disregard whatever common national critique we might share and cast me away and isolate yourself to try and prioritize whatever hyper-partisan worldview we have. So I would say my message to the left and the right is don't do that, because that is not going to build anything, and that's exactly what the elite want.
I know and who is the fake left or not is always up to debate. But I know for damn sure the fake left wouldn't come on the show and have these conversations. The fake left are the people who snipe from behind the scenes. They discourage dialogue. It's not that I noticed. Like RBN, like if you guys disagree with us, have a conversation. I've seen you do that many times. If you had disagreement with us, have a conversation. But a lot of people like to snipe. And then they want to say, oh, why do you think we're not allies? Because of that. So I do appreciate you coming on. And I don't know, like I don't know what a lot of people expect us to fight over. And me and CJ talked about this earlier. Like the patriotism discussion literally is only like 5 minutes. And my issue with some patriotic socialists was I see some people say you have to be patriotic to be socialist. You came on and say, oh, I don't really care. So I'm like, all right, that simply ends that conversation. So I hope you guys enjoyed the discussion. Let's get to some super chats. And then I'll get you out here because we had quite a few. With our eyes rise. Always leave good super chats. I see 2, so I'm gonna read both yours back to back. Conscious Peace, Yuhuru. Appreciate the super chat. Another one you left. Thank you for the $5. And I think they left it during our reparation discussion. Specifically, where does reparation for the atrocities of the Black Holocaust, including slavery, rank in your personal list of vital issues? So I guess they're just asking how important that is to you, I guess. You want to chime in with that?
I don't know. I've never really thought about the degree of importance, like whether or not I have it on a ranking scale.
I mean, I'll fight for anything I believe in. It's just that simple. That's how I am.
That's like what when Bernie Sanders, when I was remember we were all following him, he said you should be able to walk and chew gum at the same time.
All right, B for Luger. You left 4, so let's read. Well, you left 5. All right, let's get this. I'll read all yours. Thank you for 499. Ask him on to call in to talk to trans radicals, please. And that was my follow up to the original question because I'm not expert. Like I can't talk. Like I'm just not. I'm sorry. I can't talk about the trans issue under 18. But that's why I asked you if you talk to those people. Because I do think it's probably important to talk. And if they don't change your mind, that's fine. But I do think it's probably important to talk to those people. You can chime in if you want, but that's a good idea. But let me continue on.
Yeah, I don't have a lot to say with that, but yeah. I'd be happy to talk to anyone.
Yeah. Just feel free to interrupt if you have anything to say. I think for the 199 doesn't focus on this show. I guess that's just in response to you saying you don't focus on the issue. Once again, just feel free to respond if you want. Opens every stream talking about us. What Ali? You know what that's about?
Ally, maybe. I don't know. I don't know what that person is referring to. You can look through my clips. I've never done a video on trans people.
But these super chats gonna be wild because I don't know people wanting to see a fight. So let's see how wild this super chat's gonna be. Thank you for the 499 Beefer. 2 streams in a row. He says 3-year-olds are on hormones. Not true.
I didn't say that 3-year-olds are on hormones. I said that 3-year-olds or 4-year-olds are going through gender transitions and they're putting kids below the age of 18 on hormones.
Very much respect Jackson Hinkle on anti-war, anti-imperialist issues. So at least I said that at the end, right? Thanks for the $2. Jackson, remember your first video about the Great Reset? I want to get your take on this because I was talking shit like I always do. And I was like, man, I don't like y'all. Like y'all talking about the Great Reset. That's just capital. I'm like, well, when I said that, I was like, bro, capitalists get together and they plan the global economy all the time. So, and I will ask you that, like, what am I wrong about that? What's different about the Great Reset?
Well, the Great Reset and what Anthony is referring to is I used to be like far more skeptical about the legitimacy and the seriousness of the agenda of the Great Reset. If you've followed me, Anthony, since I first started my channel, I've grown quite a bit. I've changed quite a bit.
Me too.
So I'm not going to act like I haven't. And especially when it comes to the Great Reset, I used to be far less concerned about it and used to even say that it was part of it was a conspiracy theory. But what's now proven to be the case is that, and to answer your question, Nick, is that the Great Reset is a coordinated, very highly centrally planned agenda that focuses on several key areas relating to control of food and agricultural markets, energy markets, and also to, the security state and the biomedical security state, these sorts of things. So yeah, I've the material situation that's presented itself surrounding energy markets has probably changed my opinion on it the most.
Yeah, I like when people describe the Great Reset theory, I'm like, yeah, that definitely happening.
Yeah.
I always say, I thought that they always did that though. but it's definitely a thing. Like these oligarchs coming together and planning to reset the global economy. If you don't think that's happening, are you serious? You think they just you think they just winging it? You think they just vibing? No, they got calculated plans. They got each other's phone numbers. They had this calculated expansion of NATO, the calculated expansion of global markets and economies ran by capitalists, right? So it's obviously a thing. It just depending on what you want to call it, right? Thank you for the $5, NRJ. The left needs such conversations and collabs in order to prioritize what's common and critical to us all and form a solid third party. And I think that's what you guys saw in this conversation, because a lot of people thought we had giant disagreements on things. But we just, once again, you just talk to people and you're like, okay, that's your thought. Oh, great. That makes sense. I think that's how this conversation was for the most part. A lot of people, especially online, they build these differences up that's way bigger in their head. That's why when I did that stream last night, everyone was like, holy shit, what the I'm like, bro, I didn't even view it as a big deal. I thought it was just common left discourse. So feel free to interrupt with anytime you want, Jackson. I'm going to continue as well. I saw CJ start this one, so I'm going to read this. Please ask Jackson if you support indigenous sovereignty in his version of revolution in the United States. So is that land back? I think that's what they're asking about. Do you want to take that on, Jackson?
No, I don't support land back. If that's what that's asking about, I support land reform. I think that we should give the opportunities for production back into the hands of the people of this country. But I think that, say, having land back, what some people go to the extremes of saying we want land back for the entirety of the United States. It's just a very, again, idealistic worldview that isolates yourself from the people of this country. And I'll also say that I think to a certain extent, the people who have been brought to this country and who have been picked up from all across the world and brought here at the hands of the capitalists over, the founding of our country and before it even began, have been indigenized in the United States to a certain extent. So I think that that's part of it as well.
Yeah, I say, especially as someone who's not satisfied with this country at all, I 100% support it. But I don't see I don't know the path because I'm not well educated on it. I explained it before on the show. If you gave me a button, one magic button that will transfer control, this, like, you have 50 indigenous senators, indigenous president. If I press that button, it will happen. I would support that 100% because I don't like our ruling class. I think the indigenous people, with us working together with them, could do a better idea. But if you ask me, like, how is that going to get done, I will 100% support the indigenous community in the fight for that. I don't know how that's going to get done, though. So that's where I stand on that. Thank you for the $5. ThinkPad 20. Lots of terms mean different things to different people. Well, I guess I say the only way you get land back is through what we advocate for, is through violent revolution. That's definitely not going to be something you guys do get done by voting blue. And that's why we advocate revolution. Things like that is not going to happen unless we drastically restructure society. So I want people to understand what we are fighting for. Like, if you are a land back reformist, well, a land back advocate, and I think most people aren't, but if you're a land back advocate, you better not be a reformist, because they're not going to give that up for free. I hope you guys, they're going to take blood, and I hope you're ready for it. But thanks for the $5, ThinkPad 20. Lots of terms mean different things to different people. Socialism, imperialism, patriotism, all terms are ambiguous. Just have to communicate. That's why I think these conversations are interesting. Just, hey, what's your perspective of patriotism? I explain my perspective. The idea of caring for people, I think that's a unifier. And some people may get lost in the sauce, and I think the culture war is to blame for that. They get lost in the sauce, and they start getting divisive. That's why you see the news always put up violent crime all the time. They want people to be afraid. Oh my God, this guy was killed over there. This guy was killed over there. So they want you to be afraid. Afraid of your neighbors. I feel like we should be able to talk and communicate with people and love each other. That is what patriotism should be. But the flag does kind of make me queasy. I'll say that. Thank you for the $5. Thank you for shouting out Caleb. Though these factors are obviously manipulated by the FBI. I don't know that in reference to current events. Sabby did a report on that. I always stand in solidarity, especially if anyone come together with complaints. But I would rather wait before I cast judgment. That's just how I am. I'm an abolitionist. I'd rather just wait. I don't like condemning people. That just always made me feel nasty. So I'll wait until all the facts come out. It's unfortunate that whole situation, especially the victims, if it is true. But I'm an abolitionist guy. I have a hard time just immediately casting judgment and condemning people. Let me get to
From what I understand, there were no lies in that report, and I think, of course, it is sick what happened. It's condemnable, and I hope Caleb finds the help that he needs.
Yeah. Once again, maybe I should watch Savvy's whole video. I just heard it was pretty bad. Which is sad because I thought Caleb did pretty good work on anti-imperialism as well. So let me go to the next one. Thank for the $5. Decolonized Buffalo podcast. Patriotic socialism is settler nationalism with communist aesthetics. Settler nationalism will not liberate colonized communities. Decolonization will. Thank you for the $5. Once again, you can chime in with any of these if you feel like we got a few.
Yeah, the only thing I would have to say back to that is like, how do you reckon with the fact that there are socialist patriots in places like Cuba or Venezuela or Peru or Bolivia, which were all settler colonial projects? The United States is not the only settler colonial projects, and it's not the only empire. Russia, of course, was a former, imperial core, is an imperial state. So I don't really ever understand that argument.
I understand people like if you live in Bolivia and you view that as your motherland, and you are patriotic because you want to resist the influence of imperialism, you can still have that belief in patriotism that you was born here. But even though I hate our government, but just from my perspective, it doesn't make sense for me as a black man because there's not this motherland approach here. Our labor has been exploited. We can't even get our debt paid back. We can't even get our debt owed. We can't even get the healing process of reparations started. That's from my perspective. So that's an interesting comment. Thank you for that. Let's thank you for the $5, Donnie. What does a multipolar world mean for American working class? I made the argument. I would love to get your take on this as well, Jackson. There are a lot of neocons and even a lot of liberals who justify imperialism. They say, "Oh, we have to do this. If we don't do this, the American society won't work the way it does. What we need is to keep our quality of life." If you push them, they will admit that is what it's about. And I would love to get your perspective. I don't think U.S. imperialism helped the working class. I think if you look at the billions they send to Ukraine, if you look at the massive amount of money that's spent on the military-industrial complex, that's money that's been robbed from us. So if the multipolar society that the United States enjoys right now collapses, I think we can build something that is more intelligent with central planning instead of imperialist domination. So in short, I think if we end U.S. hegemony, it would be better for everyone. Do you have a take on that, Jackson?
Yeah, I think so, but I don't think what we're gonna witness maybe in our lifetimes, but in the next generation's lifetimes is going to be a good thing for the U.S. I think we're going to see the complete collapse of the empire, and the U.S. is going to be a shell of what it is and once was. And I don't even know if it's going to be a player in this multipolar world and generations to come. But I think that a true multipolar world, as envisioned by people like Henry Carey, who is Abraham Lincoln's economic advisor, would mean that, yes, you have fair trade with all, peoples and nations of the world, and you work on mutually beneficial win-win cooperation projects rather than trying to destroy each other's lands at the expense of your own. So yeah, I think it's a good thing. And I think that for people who are living in a true multipolar world, I think that they will benefit.
Thank you for the 999 Molly. Yeah, it was a fun conversation. Thank you both for this conversation. Thank you for the support. Always good to bounce ideas off. So it's a good conversation. Thank you for the 1999 Bobby Johnson. Who do you support in the Colombian presidential election? And that was a criticism I had. But I remember you addressed it with Caramel Couch. Do you want to address that at all? Do you want to chime in on that?
Yeah. So I didn't support anyone in the Colombian presidential election. I made a comment where I said that one of the candidates was to the left of the other candidate, and that was incorrect. And I did address that on Jimmy Dore's show. But that candidate, through all his faults, and he did have many, and he's a condemnable person. I don't think that the people of Colombia deserve someone that poor as their president. He was more of an outsider, and he wasn't as anti-China as the current president of Colombia. And the current president of Colombia, I feel vindicated about my comments on, because he is acting as a tool of the U.S. establishment and of the deep state. He's out here now. He's the leader of one of the only 2 countries in Latin America that is still voting to condemn the Russian invasion in Ukraine and vote to support Ukraine. So, you know, there was many people who came after me for saying that this guy is not going to be who you think he is. And I feel as though I've been vindicated. Also about his comments with China and other things that he said about, you know, the drug trade. I think I've been entirely vindicated.
Yeah, when we covered the Colombia election, I call Gustavo more like a Bernie Sanders figure. I do think it was important for him to win that because Colombia was essentially a narco state. It was a straight up fascist regime where you had activists that were being executed in the street. The vice president of Colombia came from those activist communities. So like the old regime was so bad, having Gustavo calling for the end of the drug war. When you look at what that populace personally need, I think Gustavo was a big win. But when you criticize him, you should be able to do that as a politician. I don't give a fuck if you criticize him. He's not as far left as we want him to be. There's definitely some giant issues with Gustavo. I do think him calling for the end of the drug war, him normalizing relations with Venezuela. I got make sure I check on the update on that. I think those are good things, but I do think your criticism is worth bringing up because no heroes, no gods, right? Do you want to chime in, Jackson?
Yeah, I think, well, what I think about that is obviously I don't support like the war on drugs, quote unquote, in the United States. I don't necessarily think that legalizing, you know, the drug trade, and this is something I've kind of changed my opinions on throughout the years. I don't think that legalizing the drug trade at the behest of Joe Biden into the United States and allowing for like the direct flow of drugs into the United States is necessarily the answer either. But as for his positions on Venezuela, I don't think that Colombia is going to be a long-term ally of Venezuela. And we'll see if I'm right about this. I was right about the Ukraine stuff. But I think at the end of the day, what Colombia, and this is what I said before any of this even happened, before the election finished, was I think that what Petro is going to do is he's going to use these tepid forms of recognition and good rapport that he's established with Venezuela to eventually be weaponized against Maduro and try to replace him with someone else. So I would watch that with a close eye, Colombia's stance towards Venezuela.
Yeah, and if that happens, we definitely will call him out on that, and we definitely gotta make sure we don't have any hero worship, because I acknowledge what that victory was. First, quote unquote left win for Colombia, because it's just a fascist regime. And I would love to have a conversation with experts regarding the drug war thing, because the idea is to help end the violence in the narco state that Colombia is. But obviously, I'm not an expert in the local area. I know some things. So I would love to hear experts like what the counter argument for and against that. But I think that's the main argument that the first Black Colombian female vice president was using. They use that as just like in the United States, they use that as a way to go after their communities, and that's the cause of many violence and the corruption in the state. But I would love to hear that conversation go down. That's why I think it's still important to support it. But let's go to the next super chat. Always interesting stuff. Thank you for the $5, Carlos. The word globalist. How much time you got, Jackson? Because we got a lot of super chats.
I've got some time, probably till around like.
I know you had no stream. I got no stream too, so
maybe like 15 minutes or so. 15, 20.
Yeah, that's fine. So let's and I know CJ was gonna jump on a little bit after this too. So I'll try to get through these super chats. I appreciate your time. This was a good conversation. Thank you for the $5. Carlos, the word globalist is for supporters of the system to scapegoat the failures of capitalism on Jews and bankers. And that's my general critique of it, but I don't think that's what Jackson does. I just think it's better. I just personally think it's better to say it's imperial capitalism than globalism. But you can respond to that if you want, Jackson.
Yeah, like I said, I think what we identify as globalism goes beyond just capitalism into something else. And I think that though globalism might be a vague term, it's the best term to resonate with average people who don't spend their time learning about what techno-feudalism means and is. And I reject any sort of notion that it's parallel to being anti-Semitic.
Thank you for the 1999 Debo, the Black Panther friend of the show. I watch Jackson all the time. RBN, Jackson, Door, the Gray Zone. You know, it's all these people. We got the Ukraine war right, right? And I said this on the stream earlier before. The same way with the Iraq War, where a lot of people pretend they got that right, you're gonna have like 10 years people like, man, y'all was calling out NATO expansion. I was calling out the Ukraine aid, even though they were supportive of expanding NATO. That's definitely what we're gonna see. So thank you for the 1999. We almost done with super chats. Thank you for the 999, Eddie. I'm like 300 chats behind the holy shit. People who really was interested in this conversation. Thank you for the 999, Eddie. Hey, I appreciate this. Thank you for having Jackson on and being respectful and proactive. I told you guys, I just always match people's energy. I feel no reason for this to be like a shouting match for it. It's an exchange of ideas. But if someone goes on my show and they want to have a shouting match, I'm down, guys. That's why I say I'll match the level of whoever I'm talking to. So if you guys, we got like 1,000 people watching, which is more than a lot for us. If you guys tune in expecting a shouting match because of our take on patriotic socialism, I'm sure you probably disappointed. But me and CJ said before, we didn't expect that. So I think
I didn't either. I watched again a little bit of the stream, and I just thought that there was like so many misunderstandings as to what at least I stand for. I was like, oh, I think once you hear maybe what I stand for, maybe we'll have some disagreements still, but like it's not like it doesn't rise to the level of what some others have said or anything like that. I think there's common agreement.
Yeah. That's why I was shocked at the reaction, because I saw people tagging you like, oh, Jackson, do you see what RBN said? I was like, what? But anyway, have you guys seen the Vanguard's interview with Aaron Mate? If so, what do you make of that? Thanks again. I agree more on Aaron on the substance of the issue. I'm not one for tone policing. I just think it's weird and I like the Vanguard, and I know you guys have beef, but I met them at the Kansas City March for Medicare for All. So there is the personal connection, like we knew each other in real life. So I know they come in good faith. They're young. We don't agree on everything. I wouldn't have handled that interview that way. I brought Jackson on. We having a one-on-one. I think 2-on-1 feel like you jumping someone, right? And they had Vosh and Kyle Kalinske on. They had Ryan Grimm on, and it was super nice to them. But they were super hostile to Aaron Mate. So I'm not one for tone policing. I just think that's weird. I feel like that was an opportunity to have a productive conversation. So I'll let you take this question on. I'm in Kansas City. I like the Vanguard boys. I know you guys are always trying to create drama, but I got nothing against them. I just personally disagree with how they handle that. You can take that question on, Jackson.
I have offered many times to make myself available for a conversation with the Vanguard, and if they approached me with respect, I would approach them with respect. The only time I ever engage in any sort of personal attacks with them is usually when they leverage them first. Same with, actually, one more thing I'll say about this. Same with Ben Norton. You know, you had some people, most people understood where I was coming from, but some people who were very flustered by the idea that I was going after Ben Norton. Well, I let him call me a fascist and a proto-fascist for months on end, and I didn't say anything. So call me what you want and think what you want about what I had to say after I finally responded after months. But I tried to exert the highest level and the highest degree of restraint when coming after people that are at times even making like wild accusations like that. And if the Vanguard wants to have me on again to have an actual conversation, I'd be happy to.
Yeah, CJ, whenever you're ready, you can just pop in. And I said I do think Vanguard should debate you. I know I've seen what the whole drama about. I think you should just debate them. It's not a big deal. Just have a conversation.
This is actually a perfect time for me to pop in. I wasn't gonna pop in on the interview, but this is something, Jackson, I've always asked Nick, like, what is the genesis of the issue with Jackson in the Vanguard? Because I can't spot what it is. Can you shine some light for me and the audience? Like you're going along, everything is fine. What is the first interaction that you hear of the Vanguard? What happens?
I don't really remember what the beginning was. It's been so much over the past like year or so, but I do think that it may have risen out of, and I could be 100% wrong about this, but I do think that we shared some disagreements about the whole Anna Kasparian, Jimmy Dore thing and that sort of stuff. I don't know if that's what it came out of, but maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't really remember. I think that's what it was, though. And we had disagreements about that, and other disagreements have manifested over time.
Well, RBN kind of want to be like the peacemaker, so maybe we can do this little Bloods and Crips kind of peace thing. Like maybe y'all can call it peace, like the Bloods and Crips did, because we just feel that both of your platforms should be used for something other than that, and both of you really, because their platform is growing. It just happens to be maybe there's some overlapping growing. Is there sort of a competition you feel? You feel like there's a competition kind of thing, and that's where it stems from?
I don't talk about them unless someone like sends me a like a donation or something about it. I never talk about them. So I don't know about that, but they talk about me quite a bit. And I don't know. I think that they actually just have genuine disagreements. I don't know if it's about a competition of audiences or anything like that. I think they have I think a lot of my audience probably would disagree with the main concerns that they have on their channel and that they talk about. So I don't know if it's about that. But I think it's more so about genuine disagreements, which always just, it always just leaves me hanging. Like, why not have a conversation if we do have these genuine disagreements? And then it always comes down to the point of, they say like, oh, well, Jackson's deeply unserious. Okay. Like, I've debated with people who I think are deeply unserious, and I've debated with people who I think are serious but are wrong. So I've never understood that. And if they want to have a conversation, cool. If they don't want to have a conversation, cool. They like to call me like a Putin fanboy and stuff like that. Well, I have many critiques of Putin, but I also think Putin's doing a lot of things that are right. So I don't know. Maybe they just can't have a conversation.
Like disagreements, like I always see those like disagreements on those kind of issues, right? And I the one stream I did see is when it was like, oh, he's a Putin puppet or something like that. And I was like, see, that's just something that you guys can talk about easily. But anyway, let's do some other super chats if you guys don't mind.
I also want to bring you back on at another time to talk about the Great Reset. This actually, my wife and I are not on the same length political. Like, we're both non-establishment.
It's funny,
but
man.
she's a great resetter. Like, every day she's trying to tell me something about this. So I want to introduce what that is to our audience, but with somebody who knows about it, and I don't know about it enough. So I would, bring you back on. You can come back on maybe on a Nick and CJ show. We'll schedule it another time to talk about the Great Reset, because it feels, when she's describing it to me, Nick, and I spoke about this to you, it feels like they're talking about the same thing that we talk about all the time. And so I'm trying to get an understanding. Are we talking about the same things? Because sometimes she uses different words.
Yeah, that's why I say I was just laughing at the idea. Like, guys, they talk about something that I always thought was real. It's just they use a different term for it. I think that's all it is.
I think so too. Like, my audience nowadays is like, it's like Marxists, some leftists, and a lot of right wingers, and they can all come together in agreement on these things, and it's kind of incredible, because like
that's why when right wingers talk about it, it's super confusing, because they will sound like a lefty while talking about Great Reset theory. They're like, man, the global economic order is ruled by these corrupt capitalists. I'm like, are you a right winger or a lefty? What is that? Sorry, go ahead, Jackson.
So there's a show, I don't know if you guys know them, but the show's called Redacted, and it's Natalie and Clayton Morris. And
my wife, I've heard it. I haven't seen it, but I know because she's seen it. Yeah, go ahead.
So Clayton Morris was like a Fox News morning show guy for years, and like he'd had conversations, like he'd be the guy on Fox News that's like talking to Donald Trump over the phone on Fox News. He considers himself, and I believe his wife does as well, as actually being leftist, though, which is interesting. They have their own show, and they get a ton of people all across the political spectrum, and the Great Reset is like their big thing. Like, that's what they talk about the most. So they're really good on this too, and it's always incredible. It's bringing everyone together, because the Great Reset is an affront on all working people.
Absolutely.
I can get next super chat now.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think this is where we left off. After World War II, Germany apologized and transformed. Japan kept imperial core but demilitarized. Russia went back through shock therapy. Each has not worked perfectly. What's the path for after USA falls? They have their bunkers. They at this point, they're still in the wealth. They expanded the police state. Why do you guys think that this safer American plan is being created? I think they already preparing for the global collapse, and they're gonna be fine. So I don't think they really have a path. I think, like Jackson said, it's gonna be pretty crazy. Did anyone of you guys want to take that on before I move on to the next one? Go on.
You can go to the next one.
Yeah. Thank you for the 5
Unless
bucks.
Jackson wants to talk. Unless Jackson wants to say something.
Just feel free to interrupt me anytime. I think this is the last. I apologize, guys. I say it straight up. I apologize.
Every time you say that somebody adds another one on. Every time you say that.
I apologize if I'm missing super chat. It is not a slight. There was a lot of chats on this, so I try to start as many as I can. If I missed you, because I see 2 more left on here, it was not a slight. I promise you. TVG did a segment calling Jackson a massage. Who TVG? Who's that?
The Vanguard.
Oh, the Vanguard. They did a segment calling Jackson a misogynist because he was talking with a friend about which city has more attractive women.
Am I wrong?
That's locker room talk, man.
So let me ask. Let's ask about this. This can be sort of a short, brief conversation. How do leftist men talk about women? That's a conversation we could talk about, because obviously the conversation you had the Vanguard thinking it's misogynist. So what does that look like? I don't necessarily mean let's create rules, but to talk about, is it any different than any other guy? Is locker room talk in a
is it any different to say which city has the hottest guys? I think that's a fair question.
Right.
See, I'm all for being respectful. I'm all for the social evolution of society. There's some people like, oh my God, things were better back when we could say where. I'm actually for the social evolvement of societies, but I'm not for the no fun left. The no fun left is kind of annoying.
I'm not there either.
Unless we like mocking someone, if you're attacking someone, yeah, I get it. But we just having fun talking. Don't take the worst interpretation of what we were saying, right? Like, I don't understand that. Like, we can talk and be humans and support liberation movements, right?
Yeah.
You guys get what I'm saying? I don't endorse.
Right, we're human. Like we're humans with testosterone. Like, we can't say women are attractive. We can't.
Yeah, I'm telling you.
You know what I mean? Like that can't be a place that we.
That's not how you hang out with workers. Like I had Rome here. We were doing tour for the poor. We had a great time. We had homeless people over, feeding homeless people. We were giving away diapers. Like, this rigid form of communication does not like compute with work. That's not how you connect with people.
It's honestly just so weird and so incel-y. It's like what are you saying? You're talking about women being hot? Yeah, fucking I'm talking about women being, women have the most important role in the world, in that they bring life into the world. So there's no doubt about that. That's the most important thing that anyone could do. And I think that, talking about a woman's beauty is somehow misogynistic is pretty insane and laughable. And that's probably why, like, honestly, like, people kind of view them as being weird. Like, you call me misogynist, I see this as just being normal.
If you was calling them ugly, that'd be something. But if you was talking about how beautiful they are, that's kind of weird, isn't it?
Jackson, from the discussion between the two of you, this was one of the things I was like yelling in the back, like, this is 100% right what you were saying, and that is the left is completely disconnected from everybody, because like we have to get off this like sort of high horse, and because we believe, and I'm gonna put believe is the capital part. Some people believe they're at a heightened state of consciousness, so that sort of like excludes you socially from doing. Like, we have to get out of that, and I feel like RBN is preaching that. I feel like Dora is preaching that. I feel like you're preaching that. At least in this interview, I heard you preaching that. So, I feel like that's.
Nice,
go ahead.
Guys. I'm all for being nice. I'm a very softy, guys. I don't like insulting people. I don't like being mean to people. I'm all for being nice, but there's a certain line where you got to strip in context, humanity, humor. Like don't take context out of what people are talking about. Like, if people are just having conversations about how beautiful women is, they're not trying to be disrespectful women.
Right.
Why have the worst faith interpretation? That don't seem like a good. We talking about building working class movement. That doesn't seem like a good strategy to do that. To assume everyone have bad faith intentions, even if they say something that's slightly off, right? But go ahead, Jackson. I think you want to chime in, right?
No, like, okay, so again, for the like ultra liberal, ultra woke, ultra liberal person, like I've probably said many things that are deemed as misogynistic, right? But I don't understand, and I've never understood how if someone that you perceive to be misogynistic, but they might agree with you on like war, why you would cast that person away and why you would isolate yourself from that person if you agree on the most like what I think is probably like one of the most important issues. So I don't know. People say I've said misogynistic things. I probably have in some eyes, but let's focus on the issues that really matter. An offhanded comment that's meant to be funny but comes off to you as being misogynistic, I don't think would stop me from working with you to, you know, stop the slaughtering of millions of people.
What you're speaking to, Jackson, is because when leftists say, or non-establishment people, I'm not part of the duopoly, I'll ask why. Because you don't vote red or blue? You think that's the only thing? There's another third thing that's always missed. Your approach to politics, your approach to coalition building.
Yeah.
If you agree with 5 things, but you disagree with another 5 things, does that mean you're not going to go and work with that person on those 5 things? That's bizarre to me. That's bizarre. And I think we get pushback here for that when we say we don't see a problem. Like they want us to call out the right Jimmy Dore for the Boogaloo Boy. It's like, to have a conversation, really? Like we're going to a place where we can't even talk to people? Like that's weird to me.
CIA tactics.
There's people on the right and left like that too. Like yesterday, I had a conversation. I did a live stream with a guy named Gonzalo Lira, who's covered the war in Ukraine quite a bit, and he's like he's like vociferously anti-communist, right? He doesn't make that like a mainstay of his commentary at all. I don't think he ever really talks about it, actually. But after the phone call, we had like a full conversation about Marxism. And while I don't think he necessarily agreed with me on everything, he did agree with me on some of what I had to say. And it ended up being like a really good conversation. So whether you're on the right or left, being like all cancel culture, super emotional about disagreements is not the path forward.
And I explained before, I think that's counterproductive as well. I think when you form coalitions with people, you can educate people along the way. So as you work with someone who may have problematic views with healthcare, you can educate these people and you can bring them aboard. The West Coast elitist liberal ideology that there are people who are irredeemable. Guys, you guys understand my ideology. I'm an abolitionist. I believe people are redeemable. So I believe that literally through education, through getting to know people, through having conversation, you can change people, and this has been shown through through anti-racist initiatives. It's been shown that people who are most racist are the people who mostly around only white people or only black people or whatever. They're only around one type of people. But then we have white people that hang around more black people. The number of them being racist significantly drops. That's not a coincidence. That's because as you collaborate with people, even you think are different, that bridges the gaps. So even if there's someone you're like, man, his opinion on that is ridiculous, through working with each other on coalition, you can possibly bring them to your position if you're in the right? That's my theory of change, at least, right? And that's why I think it's counterproductive to cancel people. Just unless there's like, if you like have super, like if you're like, I believe in killing people for us, like if there's some obvious hard lines, right? There are obvious hard lines, but other than that,
like Epstein is my hero. Like, okay, like if you say something like that,
anti-human positions. Let's say that's obvious, but for the most part, like you know that if someone's anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist, that we at least trying to work for the good. Like when we talk about like Cenk Uygur, he's so far off. I'm like, dude, at this point, I'm just trying to win people over who think he's good. I'm not trying to win him over. But we are at least anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist, and we believe in healthcare. We believe in the right society. I think then we should grant each other a little grace. I think that's just my personal opinion. Let's see, what I leave. I think I left off right here. We got 2 more super chats, and once again, I apologize if I missed any of them. I think I'm 200 behind again. Thank you for the $10, Chris. Leftists calling tankies fascist. Yes, is the oldest trick in the book. It's 100% anti-communist and has its roots in the U.S. intelligence going back to the 1950s. I would love to get your guys' thoughts on this as well. But we talk about this. Remember, this goes
Yeah.
to our coverage of the CIA tactics, CJ. There's so many social democrats that want to deny this. The fact that the intelligence community, this is a fact. They wanted a weak, suitable left. So when you had the communist movement rise that gave workers the rights, they implanted these social democrats to weaken the movement, and the social democrats, did the bidding of the capitalists because they was the number one attack dogs of the communists. They were saying, "Oh, the communists are evil. We are the good people," right? And then through that, you get the DSA. You get these people that believe in working within the Democrat Party. That's a whole. I need to do a conversation about this. It's a very fascinating topic. When I read into it, and that would radicalize me. That was when I was on the Bernie campaign. I was more of a Democrat, social Democrat. Then I read stuff like that. I read about the Black Panthers, and read more theory. Then I'm like, oh, they fucking infiltrated. Yeah, and they made our movement weak. So that's my rant on that. Do you guys want to chime in before I move on next one?
Nope. I agree with that, and I'll also say, I don't know if you guys saw the assassination of Daria Dugina, Alexander Dugin.
I saw about it. Yes.
So Dugin, he's he believes in like a multipolar world. That's kind of his big thing. And his daughter was assassinated. For those of you that didn't follow, IED bomb outside Moscow blew up her car in front of her father. And I think we've crossed a line now where it's not just the useful idiots of CIA assets and CIA assets themselves who are calling tankies and communists fascists. I think we've crossed the line now where that's a strike upon your life. People say fascists deserve death and you are a fascist. And now we're witnessing that by Ukrainian proxy in the case of Daria Dugina. And, many of these same people that are calling tankies fascists in the United States have wished death upon people like Alexander Dugin. So I think it's very worrying. And I think that was kind of a changing moment in my life and many other people that I work with a lot, their lives, seeing her assassination, because these are words that are just cast around so much. But now when we see someone like Daria Dugina, who is not a soldier, not a politician, not a combatant, she was assassinated in cold blood. And you have these same exact people, all the orbiters of destiny, all the orbiters of Vosh, people like Ben Norton, who I think is worlds better than Vosh or Destiny, but still did this. They're out here celebrating and de facto justifying the death of someone like that because they view them as a fascist is very concerning, because it kind of turns the page into a new era where these people are okay with violence. And if you're okay with violence and killing people because you view them as a fascist when they're so clearly not, Dugin is an outspoken anti-fascist, that changes everything for me.
Yeah, it's been so obvious what they've been trying to do, because I've been calling fascist. I'm like, I'm to all y'all left. There have been Biden voters who will call you a fascist. I'm like, you voted for the biggest fascist in Washington in the last 40 years. And since I saw this, I'll pass right back to you, CJ. I've been having this conversation about fascism because I've been turning it on their head. Because I noticed they call anyone a fascist to give the state permission to arrest and kill them. That's what it's about. So I'm like, all right, if you want to play the game, I can play it too. If anyone's a fascist, it's Joe Biden. And I had Destiny on, and we debated that. It didn't go well for him. Because I was like, if you can't call anyone a fascist if you support this state, and if you go by the 14 tenets of fascism, the classical definition of fascism, the Mussolini definition of fascism, I looked up multiple versions. Every single one fits this country. So if you want to play that game, we can play this game. You can't call other people fascists while voting for the Democrat or Republican Party, period. But CJ, I know you want to chime in, and we can wrap up about 5 minutes or so. But go ahead, CJ.
Yeah, just a curious question for Jackson. Since we were just trying to talk about left unity over disagreements, what about you and Ben? You disagree? Do you think you could come together if you agreed on 5 issues out of the 10?
Do I think I could come together with the left? Is that the question? In the right?
With everyone? With Ben specifically. With Ben. Oh,
yeah. I just like I said, I stayed silent for quite some time when he was out on podcast calling me a fascist, because I agree with him on so much. But then a few things changed. First of all, you know, like this, he started to make more and more comments about all socialist patriots being fascists. And I think this conversation here today proved that that's nowhere near the case. We agree on most issues. And I think that I also think that Ben has very problematic issues on like the biomedical security state. And for that reason, for the socialist patriot, you know, differences I share with him, and those two main reasons I think are probably why he calls me a fascist, whatever. And I think, again, for someone like Ben, when he's publicly said that he hopes for the death of Alexander Dugin, and he tweeted this out, you can still read the tweet, it's still up.
Yeah, no, I saw it.
Because he's a fascist, and then you're calling me a fascist. What does that mean? What does that mean? You know, I think it's quite obvious what it means. And yeah, sure. I mean, like if he wants to have an agreement on him, I don't know if I want to work with someone who'd be okay with my death or wouldn't really care about my death. But yeah, and then the other thing is, I just find Ben to be one of the most absolutely just scum human beings I've ever encountered. I mean, what he did to Max Blumenthal in the Gray Zone, and basically just getting up and leaving, taking their YouTube channel, changing all the titles and everything, locking Max out of their YouTube channel, as well as locking everyone at the Gray Zone out of their Patreon account, and telling the audience that, you know, the Gray Zone was okay with this and that they allowed this to go through. He took their Patreon account, which I look at the Moderate Rebels account. It says it gives $2,600 a month to the recipient of the account. Ben locked everyone else from the Gray Zone out of that account, despite the fact that he didn't have the authority to do that. And he did that with the YouTube channel too. So I think that he's just a very, very slimy person, someone that I wouldn't want to associate with. And I think he's actually a cancer to our movement.
I'm gonna get to the next few super chats. Damn, we were really. I was on this one. No, this one. The left was purged by McCarthyism and the last Red Scare. Liberals are in effect right-wing operatives of the establishment. Our community always on point, and that's another reason why the left is weak in this country, because all the real ones was killed off by the FBI and the CIA. All the sellouts became heroes like John Lewis. Like any motherfuckers that celebrated by the establishment, like John Lewis and Jim Clyburn, they sold out. And I know we got to say, well, didn't he give a speech? Well, someone else could have gave that speech and they wouldn't have sold out, right? But anyway, I apologize if I missed this super chat. This is probably another area of disagreement between us, Jackson. Thank you, Brenda. I told you I wasn't trying to. I promise you guys, I'm trying to focus on this conversation with Jackson. I'm going through receipts. I wasn't trying to miss a super chat. I just try.
What did Brenda say about what was the super chat about?
Are you going to read the Nick Brana super chat? And
I didn't see it.
Yeah, let's say I didn't see it. I wasn't trying to dodge it. I hope you guys understand that. I don't know what it's about, but I guess it's maybe about the accusations against Nick.
I mean, we disagree. We this is just a known thing. Jackson is with, you know, he's you can just say he's on the side of Nick Brana and MPP, and we're not necessarily on that. We can say that. That's fine.
Yes.
But so I don't know the
we can say it out loud.
I don't have a whole lot to add. I mean, I don't know what the question was, but
that's just the fact. That's just the fact.
Yeah, yeah.
There's nothing else to add to that. Yeah.
Thank you for 499. Just once again, my perspective. I don't think he's been an effective leader. I don't think we should center a movement around a leader. I think we should have more leaders-based movements, especially if there's a lot of divisiveness. I think you should be willing to have the ego to step down if it's better for the movement. That's where we stand. No need to like hash it out too many times. There's obviously we have our own different theories of changes on that. I just don't think we should be focusing too much on one person. Yeah. Thank you for the 499 Blisson. Thank you for believing in talking to people. You can't affect change by quitting, giving up and silencing people. Guys, you guys gotta remember, I started out as an activist. And then I became an activist with a YouTube channel. Now I say, all right, I guess I'm a YouTuber. I'll keep it real with you guys. I'm a YouTuber now, but I was an activist who started out with a YouTube channel. And my activism literally was all about talking to people. I went to black barbershops. I was talking to conservative people in Missouri canvassing. I went to South Carolina. Like the idea of not talking to people was weird to me. So when you get into the space where people do their best to avoid people, me and CJ, we got the same thing. We're like, bro, we're from the hood. Like, what the fuck? This is weird. It's weird. What you guys do? But go ahead, Jackson. Or CJ.
I guess someone in the chat said, why does Jackson simp for Nick Brana? So that was the question. I don't know if that's
that was the shit. That was a super chat.
That's what someone said. I don't know if I don't think it was Brenda that sent it, but I think I'll just briefly say that I think it's fine to have debates about the effectiveness as Nick as a leader of the People's Party. That's completely fine. To wage unfounded claims of sexual misconduct against him when there's so much evidence that stands in the face of what people were saying is a completely different thing. You could have a conversation about whether, and I'm not comparing Nick to Julian Assange, for example, but similarly, you can have a conversation about, the inner workings of Julian Assange within WikiLeaks. Like, many people had many personal disagreements with Julian Assange. Many people who worked with Assange said he was kind of a dick. But at the end of the day, saying that he's a rapist and should be extradited to, wherever, Switzerland, Sweden, wherever they're trying to extradite him to so they could bring him to the United States is completely unfounded. And eventually he was vindicated. I don't think that the claims against Nick have been vindicated or backed up with any substantial evidence.
My only criticism, and then we can move on. My only criticism I have is if you have Nick or anyone on, I think it's a good idea to show both sides. And I feel like when you had Nick on the first time, you could have did a better job explaining Zanae's part. That's the only criticism I have, but I do think we need to have due diligence, and we should be able to talk about it. That's the only thing I think people should do in these kinds of situations.
I'll chime in. I think her allegations are absolutely founded and 100% on point. But as my first stream on this, I said before any of the details came out, I said it's because of his leadership. This can't be not just this one thing. People act like it was just this one incident that just happened. And I'm not talking about sexual allegations, but there's been multiple things that has come up that says maybe the leadership needs to be different. And then all of the things with his father intertwined, this is all highly
I think it's fine to have those questions.
Highly suspicious,
I think it's fine to have those debates and those questions. And I feel like I've done a good job of addressing my views on most of the questions that people have posed my way. I do always think
that's the biggest challenge. Is that the biggest thing when people critique you? Is that the thing that comes up the most? Is it something else? Is it the social path thing, or is it the Nick Brana thing, or is it something in particular that people always feel like gets the highest? You get the highest.
I don't know. I have people from all directions now. I have people critiquing me because I'm a leftist. I have people critiquing me because I'm conservative. I have people critiquing me because
I know the feel, man.
Ukraine, it doesn't matter. It's like all directions.
We get to a super chat. I think we all stay where we are in that position when our so let's get to the 499 because we already over 2 hours. I appreciate you hanging in there with us, Jackson. Thank you for 499 listening. Thank you for believing and talking to people. Did I read this one already? It's a similar message though. You can't affect change by quitting, giving up, and silence.
That was the same one. Yeah, that was the same one. Yeah.
My bad. So I see where I left off. Let's see. I think this one. Where can I find Jackson walking back calling Assad a dictator? And does he agree with Aaron Mate calling Russian operations an invasion?
Actually, again, to bring up the conversation I had yesterday with Gonzalo Lear, we talked for like 2 hours after the stream ended, so we had a lot that we discussed. And I brought that up, the fact that in the debate I did with Vosh, I said that. And since that, I've talked with many people who still don't like me because I said that. But many people who, and also just like back then, I probably would have said that like Vladimir Putin or Xi Jinping were like totalitarian, dictatorial. I mean, maybe I wouldn't have said that, but I don't know. I look, people change. People change a lot in their views. In 2017 or 2018 or something, I was having monthly phone calls and meetings with Nancy Pelosi because I was on her youth advisory council with 10 other kids. So it's like, I think that growth is beautiful. And yeah, I'm sure I've made many mistakes and things I disagree with in the past. That, of course, being one of them, that I don't think Assad is a dictator. And does he?
Let me say this real quick. And there was a lot of people when they knew you was coming on. There were some people that were like, why don't you ask him about this? Ask him about this. Ask him about that. And I'm like, guys, I had old takes too. I didn't want to do that because like, what are we supposed to do? Like, I apologize. I had this old take earlier. I don't feel like that leads to productive conversation. That's just my personal. That's why I didn't dig up like overseas. Like, hey, Jackson, what about this? Do you say that's not like? Well, I
think that's how you should approach conversations. Like, I have people on my show all the time, like Colonel Douglas McGregor, that I disagree with on many things vehemently, and I make an effort to focus on the things that I think matter. But so that's one thing. People know what I say about Assad and what I say about Syria now, so they can live with that. And does he agree with Aaron Matte on calling Russian operations an invasion? Well, it's objectively an invasion. Russian military personnel and Chechens and other allied forces have entered Ukraine. So yes, it is an invasion.
Thank you for 499 Manuel Jesus Orchilia Ramirez. I think I nailed it. 499. The guys from the Vanguard look like they asked for consent before a solo time. That's a dig. Thank you for 499. Here's another one from Jay Torres. Pat Sox, patriotic socialists engage in culture war BS. And that's what I was asking about earlier regarding social conservative. I think we kind of went over that. Jackson, I don't think Jackson would define it that way. But I do think the culture war is distracting. I think we should focus less on that in general and trying to bring people out of that. I'll continue to super chat, allow you to respond. Keep the LGBTQ out of your mouths. You're engaging in divisive rhetoric. Hinkle targets the trans community. Stop. So
I target people who are predators of youth under the age of 18.
Thank you for the 499. But thoughts are Rodella. And guys, we were me and CJ two straight males. Like, if you guys want like a debate with Jackson, I would be more. I wish I was more educated. Like, if you guys want to see someone push back, I'm standing solidarity with people, but I don't know the science and all that stuff. So maybe that's a conversation that probably you should have with someone who's like super educated on that. But thank you for the 499. Where can I find Jackson walking back? Oh, why the hell did I read it twice? Anyway,
you went backwards.
I did read that super chat. I remember that one. I did read that in the very beginning. And this is the last one. This locked out last super chat tonight, even if you leave another one. What do you guys think about trans women in sports? Do you hear about Lud Thomas, the swimmer? This is one of the other culture wars I thought was a ridiculous waste of time. And I would love to get Jackson's thoughts on this as well. Because when you look up, like, I was like, how many trans athletes in sports are there? I saw an article that was like there's only like 5. and there's like only 5 in some NCAA division. I'm like, this has been an issue that has dominated national discourse. And I do not think it's on accident, guys. I don't think none of this stuff is by accident. There's another issue that was meant to divide people. I think on the issue of trans people in sports, I think that should come down to the individual sport. I think the government should stay out of it. And I think there should be a conversation to be had about the sports, the scientists about it. But it's not something that should have been such an unbelievably, like, it's like all the air in our room. You see people talk about this all the time. But how many people did this affect? I just wish people care about this as much as they care about the black people in prison, right? Yeah. Like, me and CJ talk about this all the time. Like, our community is completely fucking ignored. But we always talk about these culture wars for the most part. But our community get our ass kicked. And,
but let me insert here. So let's say Jackson said, I don't think trans women should be able to play sports. What does that do? You get what I'm saying? Like, what is that? I'm not saying this person is trying to be divisive, but what does that change about the conversation we had? This I think Jackson and Nick in the conversation kind of prove this. We have to make a decision. And it sounds like it's going to have to be a conscious decision. Are we going to come together against one target that is affecting all of us, or are we not?
Yeah.
That's what I got out of this conversation, is that I went in thinking something else and I came out of the conversation with that. Because we disagree on how many things we already talked about. We disagree on a bunch of things like the Nick Brana thing, but we're still here. Like,
And I
is that
second.
true?
I
Go
feel
ahead.
better about. Sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to add. I feel better about like our collaboration and our partnership after having a conversation, which always brings up. It's like, you know, if you don't have a conversation with people, there's always going to be misconceptions. You know, and I think there was many misconceptions before, and now I think we both have a better understanding of what each other think. You know. As for that though.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I think that women should play in women's sports, men should play in men's sports, but you know, don't let those issues get in the way of the big ones. You know, I don't think they should get in the way of the big issues.
Yeah,
I did have a brief.
This is obviously an issue. Like, I don't focus on these issues, so I don't have like.
I don't either.
I
don't know why people. I don't know why people.
I don't know.
I don't know why people are like, I've never done a video on this, whatever. I have talked about it, but it's like people love people. I think what it is people love controversy, and this is what sparks that controversy.
Mm-hmm.
Never have I done a video on that. I don't know. Maybe you guys have done a video on that. But yeah, no, it's like, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. So, I
did have a follow-up question from the conversation. I just remembered it, and it's that because the conversation went about socialist patriotism or socialist, the way you describe it in is not the way when I was researching for the stream I did. It's not the way others are describing it. So my question to you is it known? Is it a known thing to you and a known thing to people with your understanding of socialist patriotism that there are people online that's kind of giving a slanted understanding of what that is? Because there is some socialist patriots, or I'll use that phrasing, that I came across that did feel like everybody have to be patriotic first, and then the phrase America first. So it felt like there wasn't a need or a priority of international solidarity necessarily. So that's the question I have for you is, do you feel, it's kind of two questions. Do you feel like there's a certain set of people that have taken the term or the understanding and had done something else to it?
What was the part you said about you said something about internationalism or something?
Oh yeah. So the second part, after that, so the second part of the question is, some of the content I found, and it was before this conversation. It was the first stream.
Mm-hmm.
And researching just socialist patriotism and trying to just get a basic understanding. I would say probably like half of the footage I found was sort of disturbing in the sense, from my point of view, and how they were describing it, as if those leftists who aren't socialist patriots aren't necessarily true socialists. So I was just wondering, have you heard of like people calling themselves socialist patriots who are not necessarily describing it the right way, in your opinion?
Maybe, I don't know. I can't speak for everyone on the internet, and I'm going to answer this question, and then I am out of time. I apologize,
okay.
But
no worries. We can wrap up.
What I'll say is that, again, patriotism is part and parcel to socialism. I don't see it as an other. We've had to frame the debate of this issue by way of, you know, is patriotic socialism a good thing? Is this something that we should strive for? Whatever. But in all honesty, socialism is patriotism. And I think some of the quotes that I brought up earlier highlighted that. If you guys weren't, tuned in for that, go watch the beginning of the stream. But as far as internationalism goes, because this is obviously part of being a Marxist, being an internationalist, one thing that I will say here, and I don't think this is a quote that I read, but this is from Mao and the role of the Chinese Communist Party in the national war. He said, "Can a communist who is an internationalist at the same time be a patriot? We hold that he not only can be, but he must be." And that kind of leads into the point that I brought up when we were talking, Nick and I, about internationalism, and that the only way that you can develop a true national reality as a socialist is through national critique. And by doing so, you establish yourself as a true internationalist that can work together with other peoples of the world in other borders, in other nations, who ascribe to other religions, to build a multipolar world built on win-win cooperation. Leftists and quote-unquote socialists who envision a world free of borders, who envision a world free of nations and free of people and their history, are engaging in an idealistic, abstract reality that is so far away from the truth that they have done nothing but isolate themselves. And again, it doesn't mean that we erase or we support the historic ills. I'd never say that. And, you know, people like Danny say like, oh my God, you can't be a patriot in a country that does so much evil, past and present. No, Lenin showed us that you can condemn the slavish past and the slavish present. And that's what you have to do as a patriot. And yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say regarding that. I don't think there's anything else I really want to add here, but those were a few quotes that I think were really, really good. And just show that historically, yes, socialism recognizes that patriotism is self-evident.
Well said. So thank you for hanging in there with us, Jackson. This conversation way longer than I thought it was going to be, but let's wrap up. I got another stream. I have another stream tonight, so I'll let you get out here, Jackson. I'll pop
all right.
out here.
Thank you guys for having me on. All right.
See you guys. See you next time.
The host of the dive. That was a good conversation.
Yeah.
I will have Delilah and Comrade Misty on today. We're going to talk about Biden's police state. Biden was talking about the Safer American Plan. Delilah going to talk about her experience because obviously she was very vocal about the Uvalde situation. We're going to talk about a lot of policing and promote Camp Dada. A lot of great conversations tonight too. I hope you guys enjoy. CJ, you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, actually, I do want to add this part because the quotes that he kept quoting from Lenin, in my opinion, what Lenin and Mao is describing their patriotism is not the patriotism that they're talking about.
Yeah,
I don't see those things as the same thing. Like, because when he reads the quotes, and the previous quotes is what I'm really referring to, when he reads the quotes, because they say it and then they kind of talk about what it is, that's not what, in my opinion, what the patriotism he's talking about. I don't see those as the same thing. I see the patriotism they're talking about is the patriotism in the culture of wanting to revolution. That's the patriotism, not in the entity. And then the other problem with the patriotism specifically to the United States is that indigenous people, this is their land. So this is why he has to be against land back, which is unusual because you have to be against land back in order to, like, those are distinctly connected. It's specifically in the United States. Those are specifically connected because would you be a socialist patriot if we're talking about the patriotism of the indigenous people who are the original people of the land? And this is the problem, which I had time that I was leading to. I was going to ask him about. Anyway, maybe another stream we can bring him on.
My last thought, that's exactly why I brought up. I said, I understand because if you read history, communist movements was extremely patriotic, and that's what a lot of patriotic socialists took that inspiration from. But it makes sense if you're patriotic in the DPRK when Korean people were genocided by the largest imperial corps. And I mentioned that, and the reason why there's not a dispute here is because he was like, I don't care if you like the dispute really would have been if he said, oh, I don't consider you
everybody.
I don't
If he
consider you
said that
socialist.
everybody, yeah, then
I
that would
asked
have
him,
been
I
a
was like,
problem.
do you think you can be he like, yeah, you can, I don't care if you're patriotic. If you work on me to get socialism, that's all that matters to me. I don't
Like the
agree
indigenous
because,
people can be patriotic socialists because this is their land. Like that will be something I will understand because that's more comparable to what you're reading.
yeah.
What Mao is saying and what Lenin is saying is comparable to the indigenous people saying this.
Yeah,
That's the difference. That's the difference.
Yeah, that's exactly why I understand why like indigenous Bolivians who, even though
not
they
the people who came in and genocide people and say, okay, now the people who did the genocide, now you are the patriots. That's not what that is applying to.
Yeah, so I'll just say, and this is why RBN had a position where we did. Like the left right now, the anti-imperialist socialist movement, as we know right now, is fighting a challenge that we never seen before. And guys, I read Lenin, I read Marx. There's value that you can get from those. That's why I advocate reading for it. But we got to take those lessons and apply it to modern society. No one ever faced an empire that we face today. No one ever been in our position, CJ. Who had our ancestors cross the ocean? They've been slaves. They've been financially oppressed. You got the prison state that have been expanded. You got Wall Street oligarchs taking advantage of us. No one ever fought a movement been in this situation before, and I think we need to evaluate that and come to terms with that by taking what older intellectuals said, but also applying it to now, right? But anyway, this has been long. I still got another show, so
yeah. So again, remind me what you're doing before you go. I'll end the stream, but remind me what you're doing. Remind me and the audience you have something coming.
So I'm gonna have Misty and Delilah, a friend of the show. She ran for governor in the Green Party in Texas. So we're gonna have like an hour conversation. Comrade Misty, she was supposed to come on last week, so I invited her on for this discussion because I had to cancel, unfortunately. So she's gonna join us as well. So we got one more conversation today. So make sure you guys check that out.
All right, Nick, you can pop out if you want. I'll end the
stream.
Like the stream. Make sure you email us if you are interested in being part of the Los Angeles. Hang on, let me throw this up here. If you're interested in being, oh wow, that's me. If you're interested in being part of the Los Angeles Community Outreach for RBN, which I'll be running, you can email us, and in the subject line, if you would put LA RBN, and then here we have, oh, not that one. Let's do Activist Summit. If you're an activist of any kind, doesn't matter which, if you're an activist, so climate, police brutality, abolishing the police, trans activists, LGBTQ rights, disability rights activists, any activists, or you're part of an organization that does activist work, please email us. And if you want to be a part of the Activist Summit, which is October 22nd and 23rd, it's a Saturday and Sunday. And it's just a showcasing your activism, maybe helping you raise funds for your activist work. So email us in the subject line, put Activist Summit. And then the last thing is at the bottom there, our Substack. I'll make it not scroll here. Let's turn the scrolling off. So our Substack, if you want to get notified of streams just like this one, join our Substack, and we send out notifications for our streams. Yeah, here we go. We send out notifications for our streams, and you will get notifications for a stream like the one you saw today. Also, if you want to support us financially, the best way is through our Patreon. And that is our Patreon link there, patreon.com/Revolutionary Blackout. Thank you for joining us today for this conversation. I think it turned out well. My producing skills in the background. I'm going to go ahead and end here. I got to go pick up the daughter. She just started school. California starts late, so we just started school. Today's the first day of school. Got to go pick up my daughter. So everybody, thanks for joining us. Hopefully you like the conversation. Hit the like button on your way out. And here is Malcolm X. Let's go.
You don't get freedom peacefully. Freedom is never safeguarded peacefully. Anyone who is depriving you of freedom isn't deserving of a peaceful approach by the ones who are being deprived of their freedom. And when black people in this country come out from under the mental straitjacket that the Negro clergymen have placed them in, and begin to see that the only way you can get freedom is to get it the same way the white man in this country got it from England, or he says he got it from England. He was willing to pay the price for freedom. When you're willing to pay the price for freedom, then you get it. But the Negro in this country has never been willing to pay the price for his freedom. All of the price that we've been paying in the past has been freedom for the white man. We fought abroad so that the white man in America could be free today to sick police dogs on us, to beat our people in the heads with police clubs, and to turn water hose on little women and children and babies simply because they want to walk down the street like decent human beings. That's now the only way you can have peace is to eliminate those injustices, and the American white man is not going to eliminate them. He's going to talk that pretty talk, but he'll still continue to practice those inhuman deeds.
You got the Honorable Elijah's message yourself behind prison walls.
When I was a Christian, I committed many crimes, and those crimes led to my own imprisonment, and also led to my being very atheistic, agnostic first and then atheistic. And it was only after hearing the religious teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad that I became religious and was able to reform myself and rehabilitate myself. But I learned that after trying to reform and rehabilitate myself, that the American white man was more against me then than he was when I was a criminal, when I had criminal tendencies and was trying to carry out or practice his Christianity.
Do you blame Christianity for your crimes?
Christianity is one of the real causes of most of the condition that black people in this country are confronted with. It's the religious concept that Christianity has given Negroes in this country that makes us almost incapable of solving our own problems. The black man in this country has